Sup, my fellas. Don't forget to leave feedback, and enjoy the story. In his past life, the protagonist was the sword god. He possessed incredible power, but he was betrayed and killed. Instead of dying, his soul was reincarnated in the body of an ordinary man. The protagonist didn't have much money, so he lived with a roommate. Moreover, he had a congenital defect, which prevented him from connecting to VR. 6 long years of meaningless living in this body passed. Finally, a chance for a cure appeared. The cure for his illness was a special capsule, worth 100 million won. The protagonist learned of a streamer tournament, where the grand prize was that very same VR capsule. In the virtual world, his skills as the sword god would find meaning. He agreed to participate in order to escape this life. The protagonist entered the capsule, closed his eyes, and woke up in a different place. The system announces that Kim Tae-jun has entered the training ground. The streamer appears there too, surprised that his friend has joined him inside. When asked, the streamer explains that this training ground is a basic capsule game used for sparring records. He shows that players choose a difficulty and fight AI opponents to set their scores. His friend casually asks if he can just fight him instead, but the streamer refuses and warns that a real hit would hurt. His attention shifts when the system reacts to his friend's choice. The display explains that the AI has 10 levels, each stronger than the last, with level 10 modeled after the best record among those who cleared level 9. The streamer adds that Shin Ha-yeon has held that top record for years. He starts to explain that even challenging level 10 requires clearing level 9 first, which is already extremely difficult. Before he can finish, he notices something unexpected in the system response. His friend silently clenches his fist as the training ground begins generating an opponent immediately. The system declares that a duel state has been created and the match is about to begin. The streamer realizes in disbelief that his friend skipped straight to a higher level and armed himself with a spear. The AI attacks first, charging in with overwhelming speed. He meets the rush head-on and blocks the strike cleanly. Watching the exchange, the streamer is thrown off by how abnormal his friend already seems. His friend counters with aggressive precision, moving with a confidence that looks almost insulting. The AI tries to recover under the pressure of his relentless assault. He keeps driving forward, forcing the machine back and denying it control of the fight. Then he unleashes a heavy sweeping blow that crashes through the clash. The hit lands hard enough to visibly cut into the AI's health, proving the damage was real. For the first time, the streamer wonders if what he just saw was not luck at all. A training duel begins with a swordsman facing down a humanoid combat AI in a sunlit hall. The AI lunges first, but the young man meets the attack with a sudden burst of speed and a clean counter. His blade work traps the machine in a web of slashes before it can regain control of the exchange. The AI tries to recover its footing and continue the fight. He presses the advantage immediately, cutting through its defense with another sweeping strike. The blow severs the AI's leg and drops it hard to the floor, ending its mobility. A spectator in a red hoodie is stunned that the match ended so decisively. The damaged AI can only look up from the ground at the fighter who beat it. The victor pins the machine down, making it clear the duel is over. The AI falls silent, unable to continue. The swordsman stands over it calmly, showing no strain after the win. The defeated machine begins to break apart into digital fragments. Its body rapidly dissolves as the simulation unregisters the loss. The arena confirms the result by leaving only the winner standing over scattered remains. The last of the defeated AI disappears from the floor. A system message announces that he has won a level 9 duel, and records his current rank as 107th. The spectator realizes in disbelief that the AI he just beat was level 9. As the winner processes that result, the system begins loading his next opponent. A new combat model materializes with a more advanced, ominous profile. Its red visor signals a far more dangerous enemy than the last one. The new AI appears fully armed, and the spectator recognizes it as Shin Ha-yeon. That name alone rattles him, because this opponent is on another level. The swordsman turns toward the new arrival, puzzled by the sudden escalation. Elsewhere, 2 lab staff members discuss the match, and one addresses the other as director. The subordinate challenges the director for interfering with the setup. She complains that giving out a free loan capsule and pushing things this far was unnecessary. In her view, the director practically claimed the trainee for herself because he looked too weak to ever reach the Rios. The director answers that she refused to let real talent be wasted. Reviewing Jin Seo-jun's profile, she explains that even when he could barely maintain minimum sync, something about him stood out. Now she believes his abilities have grown far beyond what they were back then. The subordinate concedes that qualifying is still unlikely, but the director makes clear that if he does qualify, she believes he could actually win. Back in the arena, the next duel begins with explosive force. Shin Ha-yeon closes the distance instantly, and drives a brutal opening strike into him. Watching with folded arms, the spectator doubts Seo-jun can really beat someone like this. Still, he eagerly starts recording the fight. If Seo-jun somehow wins, he knows the footage will be priceless. From Shin Ha-yeon's side, the mismatch seems obvious, making the recording feel like guaranteed gold. She unleashes a powerful red arc meant to finish the exchange in one overwhelming attack. Seo-jun reads it in time and blocks with a precise blue counter, refusing to be blown away. The clash sends both fighters separating across the hall as the force of the impact tears through the space between them. The spectator recognizes the opponent as the same Shin Hyun he expected to dominate. At the same time, someone who knows her skill reflects that they had noticed her exceptional ability before. Shin Hyun is acknowledged as more talented than almost anyone seen in that observer's previous life. There is only one exception, and it is Seo-jun himself. The spectator suddenly realizes Seo-jun is about to do something reckless. Seo-jun abruptly closes in and initiates a direct body-to-body grapple, turning the sword duel into a close-quarters struggle. The spectator can only resign himself to the chaos as it happens. Even while shocked by the move, he admits he cannot understand how Seo-jun is managing to keep up with Shin Hyun at all. The young man grips his weapon and prepares to test the game's combat for himself. A sword drops onto the wooden floor, signaling the start of the duel. His opponent's attack closes in, but the strike fails to draw even a drop of blood, proving the fight is taking place under virtual rules. Realizing the system only deducts health, he treats the danger lightly despite already losing a point. His friend immediately suspects he did that on purpose. He admits he was simply curious enough to test how the simulation worked, which only confirms how reckless he is. The humanoid training robot raises its blade and shifts from passive defense to a serious attack posture. It launches forward with explosive speed, turning the spar into a real test. The machine drives in aggressively, trying to overwhelm him before he can settle. A sweeping slash tears across the hall as the robot presses its advantage. The robot tracks him coldly, its visor glowing as it calculates the next strike. He stays calm and studies the assault instead of panicking. Their weapons finally meet in midair, and the clash reveals he can keep up with the machine's speed. He reads the exchange with sharp focus, already looking for a pattern rather than merely surviving. The robot continues attacking without hesitation, trying to break through by force. Its visual systems process the duel, but the human's movements begin to exceed its expectations. He narrows his eyes as he starts to understand exactly how the robot fights. The machine swings again, committing to another clean, practiced arc. He evades with a kick and movement that disrupt the robot's rhythm instead of meeting it head-on. The robot lands and resets quickly, refusing to leave an opening. Its health has dropped further, showing that his counters are steadily turning the match. When he stops advancing, the robot is thrown off and realizes he is no longer playing by its pace. He decides that if the machine will not come to him, he will force the next exchange himself. He surges in from above, taking control of the distance and momentum. The two collide in a burst of steel as he drives the fight into close quarters. Their blades lock, and the contest becomes a direct struggle of timing and precision. He keeps pressing through the bind until the robot's weapon control starts to fail. Watching the exchange, his friend begins to realize what he is seeing. The pressure peaks as the locked blades crack apart under his superior read of the fight. The robot is thrown back, losing both balance and its weapon. He recognizes the outcome before anyone says it and allows himself a confident smile. With the robot down, he levels his sword at it and leaves no doubt that the match is over. He bluntly tells the machine that even years more training would not be enough to beat him. The robot's body begins to break into digital fragments, confirming its defeat. The system declares him the winner, and ownership of the high-level account shifts to him, stunning his friend. His friend can barely process that the impossible upset actually happened. The transfer completes, and the new owner reflects that the previous holder was foolish to gamble the account away. The story moves to the next day. At home, his younger brother immediately orders him to pick up food and starts treating him like household labor. The demands pile up into complaints about cooking, cleaning, and laundry, making it clear this is routine. Even as he brushes his teeth, his brother keeps assigning chores and makes it clear refusal is not an option. A sudden sound from another room interrupts the domestic nagging. He goes to check and finds the VR pod already installed, meaning he can finally log into the game properly. Seeing it ready, he decides he might as well start setting up a stream too. He lies back in the pod and enters the system. A bright transition effect carries him into the game world. He opens his eyes inside the simulation, waking into a new environment. He finds himself standing alone in a vast, sterile room with no immediate explanation. Disoriented, he tries to understand what kind of place he has been brought to. As he looks around for answers, a system screen begins to appear before him. The protagonist enters a streamer's personal lobby, realizing this is the private space used to prepare before going live. He understands that streamers decorate these rooms for viewers, and notes that his own setup is still bare compared with the flashy examples around him. He decides he can improve the room later, since his immediate priority is getting started. With that settled, he opens Tradell, the top streaming platform, to choose what he will broadcast. He browses the live listings and trending games, looking for the best opportunity rather than just a random title. His goal is clear: build enough of a following as a streamer to qualify for Rios. As the stream prepares to launch, he commits to a specific game for that plan. He picks Dawn of the Assassination Squad, Shadows in the City. The game is introduced as a medieval-era assassination title built around eliminating targets by any ruthless method possible. Its popularity is overwhelming, having drawn more than 2 million viewers on launch day alone. Even a week later, the excitement is still strong, making it a smart choice for someone trying to attract attention. He judges it perfect for a beginner streamer who needs momentum fast. The game drops him into a nighttime cityscape, where a grappling line shoots across the rooftops. The hook catches firmly, signaling the start of an infiltration. A blade or a line strikes down onto the stonework, anchoring his entry into the mission. His assassin avatar swings in and lands with practiced speed, immediately moving like someone built for stealth and pursuit. He reaches the rooftop edge and steadies himself, taking control of the situation. Perched high above the city under the moon, he surveys the route ahead like a hunter entering his territory. From that vantage point, his hooded character stands over the glowing city, fully immersed in the role. He accepts the challenge and prepares to begin in earnest. The stream officially starts just as his assassin persona steps forward into the mission. He introduces himself as a first-time streamer and invites anyone watching to guide him, while the game identifies his character as Taewoo and he wonders whether the audience can actually hear him. He reflects that although he is new to VR, he is not truly inexperienced with games, recalling how confidently he used to dive into them. That confidence returns as he settles into the assassin's body and reads the world around him. He moves to the rooftop edge, ready to descend into the city and test himself. Below, the streets present a refined, living setting filled with period dress and quiet movement. He appreciates how carefully the game has built its atmosphere, recognizing the craftsmanship behind the world. His attention sharpens as he senses the mission is about to become more specific. A nearby step or approach alerts him that someone has arrived. He recognizes the newcomer as Dane. Dane is revealed to be Christina, who warns that this mission may be one they do not return from. He answers with calm familiarity, reminding her that danger has always defined their work. He realizes the game is still carrying him through an automatic tutorial conversation. That makes him understand Dane and Christina are preset story partners, and he is impressed by how naturally the game introduces them. Christina hesitates, still weighed down by the risk ahead. He tells her that if she is going to die for this cause, she should at least trust him with the task. She accepts the point, but warns that their enemies may already be tracking them. He takes charge, instructing her to go to the tavern first and wait, while he handles the next move. Before parting, he hands her a sealed letter. Along with it, he leaves her with the creed that defines their order: doubt everything and accept nothing blindly. As she departs, he feels the real operation beginning. He embraces the uncertainty ahead, deciding that even chaos can be used. Without hesitation, he launches himself off the rooftop and back into motion. He catches a line or pole mid-descent, turning the fall into a controlled maneuver. Using that momentum, he swings down aggressively toward the street below. He crashes into a landing point hard enough to shake the ground, completing the tutorial's dramatic entrance. He lands in a crouch like a seasoned assassin, the game presenting him as far more stylish than he expected. For a moment, he is fully locked into the role, focused and exhilarated. Then the tutorial auto mode ends abruptly, snapping him out of the scripted flow and leaving him briefly blank. Now on his own, he starts figuring out where to go next by reasoning through the route himself. Faced with a dead end, he realizes the route has been overdesigned and there is no normal way forward. The tutorial immediately points out the intended solution: use the exposed pipe to climb. He doubts the idea but reaches for the pipe anyway, accepting the game's logic. The moment he grips it, he braces himself to haul his body upward. Instead of a clumsy climb, his body launches into a fluid acrobatic movement on its own. He lands cleanly on the rooftop, discovering that the avatar can execute skills far beyond what he consciously knows. That unexpected ease makes him realize the immersion is so complete that his body naturally follows the game's system. He concludes he will need to loosen up and trust the automatic movement more. A tutorial quest appears, revealing his mission: assassinate the noble Itor, a handler for a secret society. He reduces the objective to its simplest form: find and kill Itor. Seeing the route marked out for him, he admits the game is at least making navigation easy. The next instruction tells him to descend by rope from the roof. As he starts down, he notes that even basic movement feels surprisingly manageable. Midway down, curiosity gets the better of him. He wonders what would happen if he ignored the safe method and dropped early. Convincing himself it should be fine, he decides to jump instead of climbing the rest of the way. He lets go with a resigned sense that this is probably a bad idea. The shortcut ends in a hard crash to the ground. Dazed but alive, he admits the experiment failed exactly as expected. While recovering, he notices a floating interface nearby. The feed reveals that his gameplay is being streamed and that a few viewers have already wandered in. He is startled to learn he suddenly has 4 people watching him. Remembering advice that even a tiny audience matters, he apologizes for only now noticing the chat. The viewers immediately tease him and push him to stop stalling and continue the mission, making him wonder why their usernames are so bizarre. Their presence reminds him of earlier advice that streaming is about more than numbers. He recalls being told not to be discouraged by silence, or a lack of viewers at the start. What mattered most, he was told, was building real connection. The point was that smaller streams let people actually be seen instead of disappearing in a crowd. Taking that to heart, he decides to answer his viewers casually rather than freeze up. The chat confirms he really is a brand new streamer, and even explains they checked his profile. Still sitting where he crashed, he complains about the hassle until the viewers remind him to get moving, and he finally heads for the target. He arrives at Count Itor's estate, a looming mansion that feels more ominous than elegant. Even he notes how quickly he got there, while the chat jokes about the place looking haunted. At the front gate, he naively considers walking straight in, and the viewers instantly shut that idea down. He then remembers there was a written note explaining the mission details. Checking it, he learns the tour is in a second-floor bedroom and that roughly 20 guards are stationed around the estate. Preparing himself, he asks what weapons he has available. The system equips him with a metal gauntlet. It also provides a sword stick, and the chat explains these are just the tutorial's default weapons. Satisfied that the basic loadout will do, he decides to begin the infiltration. The moment he declares he is going in, the viewers panic and try to stop him. Confused by their reaction, he asks what he missed. The chat points out he clearly did not finish reading the note, and grimly predicts disaster if he keeps improvising. At the gate, he asks whether the front entrance is really impossible, and the viewers answer with a term he does not know, rampage run. They explain that normally being spotted powers up the enemies, so missions are meant to be cleared through stealth. A rampage run is the reckless veteran strategy of charging through the front and fighting everything head-on. He immediately asks whether that means the tutorial can be beaten that way instead. The viewers admit no one has ever finished it, but they mention one legendary player, Shin Hyun, who might have been capable of it, and that possibility makes him smile. Fixing that name in his mind, he steps forward with renewed intent. Pulling up his hood, he decides the only way to know is to try the impossible route himself. A blood-red moon hangs over a church as a beam of ominous power descends, setting a dangerous stage. A hooded newcomer senses the crushing pressure in the area and recognizes that this place is no joke. Even so, he stays calm and decides to proceed. Watching through a live chat, spectators immediately expect him to die and treat his attempt as entertainment. His arrival stirs even more interest, especially once viewers realize this unknown player is heading towards Shin Hyun's domain. He judges that provoking some attention is acceptable as long as he does not cross a real line and keeps walking. Inside, armored guards notice the disturbance and become alert. When they confront him, the intruder steps forward instead of retreating. He meets their hostility with confidence, already reading how the fight will go. The audience mocks him harder, convinced his death is only seconds away. A guard attacks first, demanding that the intruder reveal himself. The hooded man's focus sharpens instantly as he reads the strike. He intercepts the sword at the exact moment of impact, stunningly precise under pressure. Without wasting the opening, he counters in one smooth motion and cuts the attacker down. The first knight collapses before him, leaving the others shaken by how easily he won. The chat erupts as viewers realize they may have just witnessed something extraordinary. He barely reacts to their shock, only mildly curious about what impressed them so much. Trying to make sense of it himself, he replays the movement in his mind. The system registers the defeated enemy as the damage lands cleanly. He wonders whether enemies are really supposed to fall that easily. Another knight charges in furious retaliation. The intruder stops that attack too with another perfect deflection, this time even faster. Viewers who expected luck begin to panic as the second impossible defense lands. Debate breaks out over whether this is genius or a fluke, while he is still stuck on the unfamiliar term they keep using. He stands over the fallen guards, calm and untouched, while the survivors hesitate. As another enemy drops, he finally asks the chat to explain what a parry actually is. His question leaves the audience baffled that someone can perform the technique without even knowing its name. He confirms that ignorance plainly, while the chat swings between calling him unnatural and insisting it must be accidental. Growing impatient, he demands a proper explanation instead of insults. Once it is laid out simply, understanding clicks into place for him. He grasps that a parry means matching the enemy's timing and angle so precisely that their attack is redirected in a single step. When viewers add that even veteran professionals struggle with it, he is genuinely surprised. They cite top-level fighters who trained against elite opponents and still found the technique difficult. The example makes clear that mastering it requires reading an attack at the same level as the attacker. He concludes that the difficulty makes sense, since the movement demands perfect synchronization with the enemy's force. Now that he understands the concept, the chat warns him to turn back before stronger opponents arrive. He only smiles, unconvinced by their fear. When asked why he is so calm, he answers with complete sincerity. To him, the technique never seemed especially hard, even as the chat insists he is underestimating it. Then one viewer pushes back hard, claiming the earlier exchanges proved real skill rather than luck. That opinion sparks an argument, with others rejecting the idea that an unknown newcomer could rival the best. Their disbelief reminds him of a familiar pattern he has lived through before. He recalls a past life where people dismissed his talent because they only judged the visible result, not the effort behind it. Back then, his ability was repeatedly overlooked and undervalued. Now, however, he recognizes that his current situation is different even if the reaction feels the same. His reflection ends as he advances deeper inside, weapon in hand. A full squad of knights blocks his path and orders the intruder to stop. He steadies his grip and decides that, whatever world he is in, the core principle of combat remains unchanged. Rather than argue about his ability, he chooses to settle the matter through action. He launches forward to prove himself with results. A hidden blade flashes first, signaling that the intruder has already begun cutting through the defenders. He drops into the fight from above and drives his attack straight at a guard before the man can recover. His calm, focused gaze makes it clear he is completely in control of the ambush. He follows through with another clean strike, smashing past the enemy's defense. The spectators watching the stream are jolted from confusion into shock as another hit lands. His weapon bites through again, showing that ordinary guards cannot stop him. A burst of force throws the fight wide open as he overwhelms the room with sheer momentum. He moves like a red blur, repositioning before anyone can pin him down. Another attacker rushes in, but the intruder meets him head-on and cuts him down in the exchange. When the motion settles, one more body is on the floor and he is still standing untouched. He openly taunts the defenders, declaring that if they want him, they will need far more than this. The stream chat erupts with disbelief while a surviving guard panics and begs for backup. Before help can organize, another guard is struck down in a spray of blood. The killer exhales in relief, as if this level of resistance is barely worth his effort. He steps forward through the aftermath, treating the fallen as nothing more than obstacles underfoot. Counting the corpses, he notes that 6 enemies have already been dealt with. Viewers struggle to accept that someone this dominant could really be a beginner, while he dryly confirms he only started recently. He pauses, letting the absurdity of the situation sink in. When one chatter keeps spamming, he has the nuisance silenced immediately, and even that small act earns admiration. Others laugh at the ban and keep treating the massacre like entertainment. He removes another disruptive viewer without hesitation, proving he is as strict with his chat as he is with his enemies. Looking at the positive reaction, he wonders if he is finally doing something right. That thought pulls him into an old insecurity. In his previous life, he never stood out because of where he came from. He remembers the one person who changed that, a great swordswoman who saw his talent before anyone else did. She had recognized his potential early, and pushed him to stop hiding behind false modesty. Remembering her blunt scolding, he recalls how she forced him to take his own abilities seriously. Back in the present, the chat demands to know how he became this skilled, especially at controlling a battlefield. He reduces it to something deceptively simple: remember the instincts of his past life. He even offers practical sword advice, but his silence afterward shows that explaining it is harder than doing it. The chat grows frustrated, convinced he is being deliberately unhelpful. Their noise is cut off when he notices the defenders finally converging on his position, exactly as expected. A full ring of armed soldiers surrounds him, their red-lit weapons closing the trap. The chat tells him to give up and die, but he answers them with a grin instead. He decides this is the perfect moment to show them what a true beginner with 13 years of experience can do. The defenders try to rally themselves by shouting that he is alone and should be easy to kill. They charge all at once, hoping numbers will succeed where individuals failed. He turns smoothly to meet them, already reading the flow of the attack. In a single violent exchange, he tears through the front line and breaks their formation. Several soldiers are launched aside before they can even understand what happened. His eyes sharpen further, showing he has shifted from playful to lethal. As the chat keeps doubting him, he dives through the opening he created and presses the advantage. One armored guard lashes out in fury, but anger only makes him predictable. The intruder plants his foot and pivots, setting up a precise counter. He catches 2 attackers at once, locking their weapons and bodies into the same doomed line. For a brief instant, one of them realizes too late that they have been completely outplayed. He finishes the motion with a sweeping slash that cuts both men down together. A small satisfied smile crosses his face as he confirms the fight is unfolding exactly to his liking. Elsewhere, a viewer watching the stream can only call the spectacle insane. Another finally understands the contradiction at the center of it all and questions whether this monster can really be a novice. The answer spreading through the community is that this so-called beginner is actually a notorious assassination fanatic returning under a new name. Joam is introduced as a player obsessed with pure stealth and assassination, and the challenge before him is described as a brutally difficult rampage run. Unlike others who gave up, the harsher difficulty only made him more determined to conquer it. Most challengers were crushed by repeated failure, with the game ending in frustration before they could make progress. But streams revealed that the mission could be cleared through absurd loopholes, like collapsing an entire building to count as an assassination. Other players exploited boss patterns and environmental tricks, turning supposedly impossible kills into gimmicks. No matter which streamer he watched, Joam found only stalling, hiding, and workaround heavy play instead of the true rampage route he wanted. After hours of searching, he still had not seen anyone achieve the genuine top-to rampage run, and his disappointment deepened. Then everything changed in an instant. A tiny unknown stream suddenly showed exactly the kind of real rampage attempt he had been waiting for, and Joam lit up with excitement. The streamer's assassin charged straight into the chaos, finally embodying the aggressive playstyle Joam had been chasing. Joam immediately realized he had found the breakthrough run. He flooded the chat with awe, convinced he was watching a once-in-history master at work. Inside the game, the assassin stood amid the aftermath of slaughter, already deep in a deadly encounter. The chat exploded over the player's impossible precision, while the assassin remained calm under the praise and confusion. He dismissed the hype and explained that he was only avoiding what should be avoided and deflecting what should be deflected. Viewers kept panicking over how unreal the performance looked, while he stayed almost bored by their overreaction. He casually told anyone who disliked the stream to leave later, showing how little the pressure or attention affected him. Even so, he noticed with mild satisfaction that all 6 current viewers had followed him. The fight escalated as an explosion tore through the room, signaling that the real boss battle had begun. The audience recognized the start of the decisive encounter, and the assassin stepped through the debris without hesitation. A violent strike crashed into the floor near him, but he avoided it cleanly as the boss made his move. The boss, Itor, taunted him and treated him like prey, making clear that this was the true test of the run. The assassin rushed in anyway, choosing offense over caution despite the boss's confidence. He closed the distance with a sudden burst, forcing Itor to react. A sweeping slash landed, but it barely scratched the boss, proving his durability was far beyond normal enemies. Itor turned toward him with amused interest instead of concern. He mocked the assassin for trying so little, as if the attack had only entertained him. The assassin immediately understood the problem. This was unquestionably a boss, and his health had barely moved. While Chat joked about impossible tactics, he kept testing the fight and looking for a workable opening. Itor answered with a grand declaration of his own power and launched a heavy counterattack. The boss's chained weapon smashed down with brutal force, trying to overwhelm him through sheer pressure. The assassin slipped over the attack with precise movement, refusing to get pinned down. He redirected the momentum and struck back through the opening he created. Itor reset his stance and spun his weapon again, preparing another exchange. The assassin came at him from above, pressing the attack before the boss could fully settle. Another hit connected, but the damage remained tiny, and Itor openly boasted that this body would not fall. The boss retaliated with another crushing blast of force, keeping the pressure relentless. Landing amid the wreckage, the assassin admitted the damage output was still far too low. He began to worry that even perfect attrition would fail if the fight dragged on. Then Chat dropped a crucial revelation. Once Itor appears, failing to kill him within 5 minutes causes an instant loss. A countdown was already running, and the assassin was stunned to realize the timer had been there without him noticing. Even with the new pressure, he kept moving through Itor's attacks instead of freezing up. Itor mocked him again, treating the fight like a lesson while continuing to dominate the pace. The assassin accepted the obvious truth that he could not kill Itor in time by fighting normally. With the clock ticking down, Chat proposed a theory that repeated hits on the exact same spot might ramp the damage. He seized on that idea immediately, deciding it was his best chance and worth testing at once. Thanking the viewer for the tip, he committed to a focused strike plan. He launched himself high and brought his blade down in a single precise line aimed at one repeated point. This time the result changed dramatically, carving off a huge chunk of Itor's health and finally breaking the stalemate. As Chat celebrated Joam's insight, the assassin realized the answer had been relentless precision on the same weak point, and he prepared to press that advantage. A battered enforcer, still clutching his chained weapon, lashes out in fury at the young assassin who cornered him. With only a little over 2 minutes left in the tutorial, the young man decides he cannot let his opponent recover. He surges in and turns the exchange around so decisively that even the spectators can hardly believe he is winning. The larger man tries to wrench back control of his weapon and vents his rage at being outplayed. He desperately demands the intruder release the weapon, but the demand only shows how badly he is losing control. His counterattack comes in wild and furious, yet the assassin stays composed under the pressure. With barely a minute left, the assassin keeps cutting into him, while the target's strength visibly fails. The damage piles up in rapid succession, and onlookers start treating the assassin's speed as something beyond normal human reflexes. Even after a brutal flurry, the target is still barely alive, forcing the assassin to recognize the fight is not over yet. He calmly judges that one final strike should finish the mission. The countdown drops under a minute, tightening the pressure on every remaining move. Outside, the blood-red night over the estate reinforces how little time remains before the mission window closes. Inside, the room hangs in a tense pause as the wounded target gathers himself for one last act. Instead of surrendering, the dying man spits out his hatred and brands the assassin a hypocrite serving the very killers he despises. He refuses to die quietly and vows to drag someone else down with him. Before he can carry that threat any further, the system declares the assassination tutorial cleared with 40 seconds to spare. Back in reality, someone at a computer immediately reacts to the clear. A replay of the feat starts circulating as the first clear by a complete newcomer becomes instant spectacle. The clip emphasizes that the rookie wiped out the tutorial mobs through 13 successful parries. The buzz escalates further when people realize he is also the first person ever recorded killing Itor. Far away from the game, the real world remains quiet and ordinary under the night sky. One viewer, still at his desk, can barely process how absurd what he just witnessed was. He is thrilled that he personally saw the first clear happen live. The story returns to the game world at the moment just after the mission's end. The dying target's accusation still hangs in the air, revealing the bitterness behind his final words. His body gives out at last, ending the confrontation for good. The assassin suddenly senses that the danger is not actually over. The dead man's last promise proves real as multiple magic circles bloom around the battlefield. A self-destruction spell detonates and engulfs the area in fire. The assassin throws himself away from the blast, barely escaping the center of the explosion. As he lands, he realizes Itor's final move was meant to kill him even in defeat. The explosion also exposes him, and nearby guards immediately identify him as the assassin. He understands at once that surviving the mission has only led into a chase. With alarms raised across the estate, he runs while the guards call for his capture. The pursuit carries him out into the dark wilderness beyond the estate. He races along a cliffside, trying to stay ahead despite his injuries and exhaustion. A glowing projectile suddenly streaks toward him from behind. He notices the attack a split second too late. The shot tears into him from the rear, knocking him off balance at the cliff's edge. His footing slips, and he loses the ledge entirely. As he falls, he reaches out in a futile attempt to catch himself. Above him, the pursuers watch from the cliff while he drops into the ravine below. He can do nothing but accept the fall. He crashes into the river beneath, vanishing into the water. By dawn, the mountains stand serene, indifferent to the violence of the night. The assassin's body lies motionless by the riverbank, as if the cutscene has ended in his death like always. Then his hand stirs in the water, showing he survived. He forces himself back onto his feet despite the damage. Still half collapsed, he remains in rough shape but alive. A hooded figure approaches his fallen body without hostility. The stranger lifts a gleaming eagle brooch, clearly something taken from the assassin or meant for him. The game shifts control from the scripted sequence to the player character, revealing the survivor is now finally playable. Viewers complain that the cutscene usually ends with Dane dying, making this survival route feel completely new. The audience immediately starts judging the scene and joking that they would have handled the danger better themselves. Ignoring the criticism, the player refocuses and prepares to decide what to do next. Now in control, he openly wonders what his next objective should be. The chat tells him to go to the tavern and speak to Christina, giving him his first real lead. He pieces together that the cutscene must have dropped him off right at that tavern. Accepting the hint, he heads inside. The tavern is lively and ordinary, a sharp contrast to the chaos he just escaped. He spots a blonde woman behind the bar who stands out immediately. Even he can tell she radiates the kind of importance that marks her as the intended contact. She senses his attention and turns wary. Christina cautiously asks whether he needs something. Before he can think through his approach, the character answers on his own and makes it clear he came with a purpose. The player realizes the game has slipped into auto mode again and is steering the conversation for him. Christina is visibly startled by the sudden confidence and familiarity in his manner. When he presents the eagle brooch, she immediately recognizes it and him as connected to something important. Her suspicion sharpens, and she demands to know who he is. He reassures her that he is not there to threaten her, and claims he came because he can help. To prove his value, he hints that he knows exactly what he is doing when it comes to assassinations. That claim triggers a realization in Christina, and she asks if he is the operative from the West. He confirms it, pleased that his reputation reached her before he did. Christina reasons that a mercenary who works for money rather than ideology is unlikely to be loyal to the cult. Deciding that cooperation is possible, she proposes they at least exchange names. He starts to answer, only to be interrupted by the system itself. A naming prompt appears, forcing the player to choose the character's identity on the spot. The viewers pile in with jokes and curiosity while he hesitates over what to call himself. He remembers that his stream already defaults to his real name, Jin Seojun, because he never set a nickname there. Rather than use his real identity in the game, he chooses the alias Nameless. He formally introduces himself to Christina under that false name. The chat immediately mocks how literal and lazy the choice sounds. He privately justifies it by recalling that Nameless was once a trendy, mysteriously cool title in his previous life. To him, the word still carries a stylish meaning even if it sounds ridiculous now. He commits to the choice and locks the name in. The system accepts it and unlocks the ability to take assassination requests through the Sun Tavern. With the formalities settled, he asks how they will contact each other from now on, but first presses for information about the brooch's owner. Christina understands he is asking about Dane, the man tied to the brooch. She tells him Dane is dead and that she buried him at the western docks. Then she gives him a signal stone and instructs him to use it to reach her in the future. The system confirms the new item, marking the start of an actual working relationship. Christina places her trust in him and addresses him by his new name, making the alliance feel official. After leaving the tavern, he stands outside in the morning light with his first contact and first tools secured. He decides that, for one day, he has accomplished enough. The viewers quickly adopt Nameless as his new identity and start treating it like the birth of a proper assassin persona. He announces that he is ending the stream for now and will return at the same time tomorrow. The audience congratulates him and says goodbye, while he awkwardly struggles through his own sign-off. Even after ending things, he is still unsure how the streaming interface actually works. The viewers vanish on their own, leaving him amused and the audience charmed by how inexperienced he still is. Back in the real world, night settles over his apartment building. He notices that all 6 viewers stayed until the very end, which feels like a small but meaningful success. Even so, their bizarre usernames leave a strange impression on him. Then something new catches his attention. A user he does not remember seeing before appears and asks whether this is the stream known for reckless rampaging. The question unsettles him because people are somehow still joining after the broadcast has already ended. To understand what is happening, he checks the community board on his phone. he finds that his first stream is already getting a surprisingly strong response. Before he can think further about tomorrow's content, his roommate bursts in and startles him out of bed. Instead of apologizing, the roommate scolds him for his lack of manners. Still flustered, he demands an explanation for why the platform is behaving so strangely. He shows that the chat is still actively moving even though the stream is supposedly over. The absurdity leaves him momentarily speechless. He starts to wonder whether any of this is operating by normal rules at all. His roommate calmly says the answer is probably on the phone. He asks whether the person in the clip being shared online is really him. The post headline makes it obvious that his tutorial performance has already been clipped and uploaded as a standout video. His roommate is baffled that a first-day streamer somehow already has fans spreading highlight edits. To the roommate, this is exactly what promotion looks like, whether he intended it or not. Reading the comments, he realizes one especially intense viewer has been aggressively advertising him everywhere. His roommate points out that the post is close to a key threshold that will push it onto the front page. Once it reaches 30 upvotes, his exposure and follower growth should accelerate dramatically. The roommate, satisfied with his own advice, tells him to stop worrying and get some sleep. Left alone, he lies awake with his phone, unable to fully relax. The numbers keep climbing, and he finally understands what people meant by promotion. He decides to stop overthinking it for the night, and see where things stand tomorrow. Even after he sets the phone down, the clip keeps gathering views, likes, and comments at a remarkable pace. By the next day, the momentum has only grown. Just as predicted, the post passes 30 upvotes and breaks onto the front page, spawning even more discussion threads. The attention is not purely positive, though, as arguments and mockery spread alongside the praise. Watching it all from his desk, he realizes the clip has gone viral and is now creating controversy too. One particular thread catches him off guard. In the Assassination Squad's own community, people are now analyzing the training ground and the mysterious AI he fought. A post explains that the Floor 10 AI was changed from standard data to a private user's data and shares footage of someone fighting that unknown version. He is puzzled that the discussion is focusing not on identity alone, but on the AI's behavior. The post compares the old AI, which would wait if a user dropped a sword, to the new one that behaved far more aggressively. It argues that the current AI deliberately exploits openings the instant a player shows weakness. The example shown makes the AI look almost cruel, attacking even when the player is trying to surrender. The machine's reaction comes off as confused contempt rather than neutral programming. Commenters seize on that and start accusing the unknown private user behind the AI of having a rotten personality. He realizes this backlash is partly his fault, since he was chatting with Taewoo while playing and only altered the data because he hated repetitive grinding. The system preserving his personality settings suddenly feels less amusing and more dangerous. Then another post appears asking whether the notorious AI might actually belong to the now famous Nameless. He recognizes the same sharp-eyed viewer from before, Joam, and is unnerved that the connection was made so quickly. The growing attention forces him to admit that things are moving much faster than he expected. From experience, he knows sudden success is often the start of trouble rather than security. So instead of getting carried away, he chooses to steady himself. He reminds himself that power gained before you are ready can become poison. With that in mind, he returns to the capsule and commits to building himself carefully, one day at a time. He closes his eyes and settles into the game with renewed discipline. Whatever fame comes next, he resolves that the only answer is to keep growing every single day. A stream connection flares to life as Sejun prepares to go live. He checks his gaming profile and notes that his follower count has finally grown into the hundreds, just as Taewoo predicted. The small victory is tempered by the fact that almost none of those followers actually watched his last live broadcast. Even so, he starts a new stream and wonders how many people will show up this time. The broadcast begins under his name, announcing that he is now live. He introduces the game, Dawn of the Assassination Squad, Shadows in the City, set in the city of Altion. The stream explains that Altion is the main stage where the story unfolds. Its districts are laid out for the audience: the Royal District, Etheria's Spire, the Gilded Quarter, and the Low Quarter. The city's class divide becomes part of the setup, with wealth and power concentrated above and rougher lives below. The rules are simple. Players can take assassination jobs anywhere, or ignore missions and kill targets freely. The game world opens on a city street, placing Seo-jun inside Altion. He slips into character with a quiet grin, ready to test the game properly. As he appears in-game, the chat recognizes him and realizes he is streaming as the famous Nameless. Seo-jun confirms that this really is his stream and jokingly denies any idea that he paid people to hype him up. A viewer sends his first donation, asking how to dodge attacks better and admitting they have been waiting nervously for his advice. Caught off guard but pleased, Seo-jun realizes he has received his first donation. The chat piles on with more requests for practical combat tips, especially on timing dodges and reading enemy attacks. He worries his first answer may have been too vague and starts thinking about how to explain it more clearly. He breaks the technique down: aim for the enemy's weapon point, strike once to create an opening, then dodge into the attack's blind angle. While teaching, he notices the chat is full of unfamiliar names and begins to suspect a much larger audience has arrived. When he checks the viewer count, He is stunned to see 327 people watching and demanding action. The number is far beyond what he expected, and the sudden attention rattles him. Trying to steady himself, he asks the viewers what they want him to do today. The audience immediately pushes for spectacle, urging him to stop explaining and show real action instead. Some viewers mock the slower pace, but Si-jun takes it in stride and tells them not to rush him. Reading the flood of comments, he sees that the game's open world gives him many possible directions, from missions to theft to random violence. He makes his choice and decides to warm up with pickpocketing. He steps into the crowded street and openly announces that he will start by stealing from passers-by. The busy market gives him plenty of cover as merchants shout and civilians move through the street. A rude man shoves through the crowd, creating the perfect distracted target. Si-jun bumps him just enough to sell the contact without drawing immediate suspicion. The man turns to complain, but Si-jun keeps moving as if it were the other man's fault. By the time the victim dismisses him as an ill-mannered brat, Si-jun has already slipped away. Hidden by his hood in the crowd, he checks the result of the theft. The pickpocket succeeds, earning him money and confirming that this method is easy and efficient for early profit. The chat erupts, half amused that the stream has become a thief run and half impressed by how smoothly he pulled it off. Viewers immediately want escalation, hoping the guards will chase him so the stream turns into real danger. As he counts the growing haul, the audience jokes that he is getting rich fast enough to buy luxury property. Before he can continue, someone calls out to him from nearby. Two local toughs approach and single him out, making it clear they have been watching his little operation. They confirm that he is the one they want and close in with the confidence of men who control the area. One of them throws an arm around Si-jun and informs him that doing business here requires their permission. Si-jun raises the stolen pouch and realizes they are demanding a cut of what he just made. As they start to shake him down, he mentally pauses the situation and questions what kind of game lets street thugs extort him right after a pickpocket. The chat instantly reframes the problem as an opportunity, urging him to stop playing nice and beat them down. Among the comments, one suggestion stands out. If he wants to cause real trouble, he should go after the gang's boss, the wanted criminal known as Disassembler. Si-jun likes the idea and decides to turn today's stream into a hunt for that target. The viewers rally behind the plan, excited to see him test his skills against Disassembler even as Si-jun admits he does not yet know what that name means. The chase for the gang leader begins, with voices insisting he cannot have gotten far and must be found quickly. Inside a grand building, an armed enforcer stands ready, hinting that the search is leading Si-jun toward more dangerous opposition. A hooded player reaches into a candlelit trap setup, still trying to force an opening in a difficult assassination attempt. He recognizes the run is going badly again, and his streamer profile frames him as Alpaca, a veteran known for repeatedly attempting this bare-handed kill challenge. After studying the target area up close, he admits he still cannot find a workable gap in the defense. The tense stillness breaks as a candle and the darkness around him signal that someone has noticed his presence. A guard below senses the disturbance and identifies the hidden intruder as the little rat they have been hunting. Alpaca realizes too late that he has been spotted, and the attempt collapses before he can recover. The game declares another failure. Back outside after respawning, Alpaca bitterly notes that this syndicate of guards has killed him countless times already. The system mockingly confirms this is already his fourth failed try, and he can only answer with dry irritation. He insists he only needs one clean break to reach Drake, but both the system and spectators doubt he can clear the route at all, especially without the tools the fight normally expects. The story shifts to explain the world's power structure, beginning with the rulers, the central controllers of the continent, and the game's main villains. Among them is the Queen, one of the dominant figures at the top of that hierarchy. Another is the Master of the Magic Tower, a ruler tied to overwhelming magical authority. The Royalist leader is introduced as another major power aligned with the ruling order. Finally, the focus lands on Drake, the boss of the Dissemblers and Alpaca's target. Drake is especially troublesome because he can appear in any of 10 random hideouts, making him hard to locate before an attempt even begins. To compensate, Alpaca buys secret map information through a trade window, while viewers recognize he is making yet another attempt. Using the purchased intel, he decides to verify Drake's current location before committing to the run. The map points him to the theater, and he immediately assumes Drake would hole up somewhere irritating like that. A viewer throws in a large donation and urges him to stop overcomplicating things and just brute force the challenge like a hack-and-slash run, while others question why he is struggling so much. Alpaca thanks the donor but pushes back, arguing that this game cannot be treated like a mindless action game. The chat insists someone is supposedly doing exactly that on the forums, which catches his attention. He turns to the claim with interest, asking whether someone is really pulling off that kind of clear right now. Amused by the idea, he jokes that if such a player exists, he deserves an absurdly grand title for redefining the challenge. When another donor demands he take responsibility for mocking the claim, Alpaca keeps laughing it off. The chat spirals into ridicule and disbelief, but the mood shifts as the possibility starts to seem real. Once the rumor gains weight, Alpaca quickly revises his stance and says that if a true pro gamer already cleared it, then his own endurance bet should no longer count. The audience immediately calls him a coward, and he awkwardly tries to recover his dignity. Then a fresh donation and the chat's sudden alarm make him realize the situation may be far more serious than a joke. Elsewhere, a violent strike shatters through glass, announcing that someone has forced entry into Drake's stronghold. The guards panic and rush to intercept the intruder, ordering everyone downstairs and demanding he be stopped at any cost. Inside the theater, a lone cloaked man stands at the bottom of the grand stairs while armed syndicate members converge on him from every direction. Viewers watching the feed begin to think this unknown attacker might actually clear the impossible route. The narration ties the scene to Alpaca's earlier all-or-nothing declaration, implying someone else has now stepped into the challenge he could not finish. The intruder then moves through a back alley while several syndicate men escort a captive, suggesting he is tracking Drake's people rather than charging blindly. The audience follows his progress in real time, wondering where the group is taking their prisoner as the stranger silently tails them. He decides to keep following for now, even as viewers worry that he is unarmed and outmatched. When the chat points out that attacking Drake's faction is notoriously difficult and tied to multiple side quests, the intruder reveals he does not even understand why this target is considered such a major figure. His ignorance shocks the audience, because he is trying to kill a ruler without even knowing what a ruler is. That revelation detonates across the chat, turning the whole stream into chaos and laughter at how absurdly reckless he is. Pressed by the mockery, he calmly explains that he is asking precisely because he does not know and wants someone to tell him. As the ridicule continues, he privately wonders whether he made a mistake by ignoring the usual combat guides the night before. He recalls rejecting those guides because every strategy leaves a trace back to its source, and using them felt too risky. The guide he checked was useless anyway, offering little more than complaints that Drake's route is unfair and barely survivable. So he settled on a simple answer of his own: overwhelm the enemy so completely that they never get the chance to retaliate. That thought ends when he steps in front of two syndicate men and bluntly demands that they hand over everything they took. He specifies the wallet they stole earlier, making clear this confrontation is not about politics or bosses to him, but about retrieving stolen property. The viewers, no longer surprised by his absurd priorities, treat this as exactly the kind of impossible stunt they now expect from him. One thug grabs him and orders him to cough it up, trying to intimidate him into backing down. But the gang only reads his silence as fear, unaware they may have cornered someone far more dangerous than he looks. A black-haired fighter closes in on a frightened subordinate and makes it clear he is not here to kill them gently. He cuts straight to the point by demanding to know where Drake is. When they admit they know their boss's whereabouts, he presses for the exact location, leaving them rattled. His clenched fist signals that the questioning is over and violence is about to begin. He calmly warns that if they will not cooperate, he will start with a beating. The nearby men are stunned by his audacity, while his own confidence shows he expects to win with brute force alone. Encouraged by their side, the gang rushes him in a pact to punish his insolence. Their charge is met by a sudden, devastating strike that tears through the space between them. He launches himself into the group and turns the first clash into a one-sided assault. Before the others can adjust, his sweeping attack forces them back and breaks their formation. One man tries to salvage the situation with a knife and a burst of anger. The black-haired fighter reads the attack instantly and stays unnervingly composed. He catches the incoming arm cleanly, stopping the knife assault at its source. Using that opening, he flips the attacker down with crushing force. The man slams into the ground in panic and pain, already overwhelmed. Without pausing, the fighter follows through with another brutal arc, keeping the momentum entirely his. A second thug lunges in from above, trying to cut him down before he can reset. He blocks the blade and answers with a sharper, stronger counter that wins the exchange immediately. The attacker freezes in shock as the fight slips out of his control. A cold, focused look from the black-haired fighter shows he has already decided the outcome. His counter lands decisively, dropping another opponent before the man can recover. He turns toward the next survivor with the calm of someone barely challenged. Moments later, the room is quiet around him, with bodies scattered and no real resistance left. Even the live audience watching his stream starts treating the massacre like entertainment, impressed by how easily he is handling it. One battered blonde man struggles up, furious but clearly outmatched. He hesitates, realizing rage is not enough against someone this dangerous. Another wounded thug still tries to protect Drake's location despite being cornered. The black-haired fighter cuts off that defiance with another violent strike before the excuse is finished. The blonde survivor is left shaken and nearly incoherent by how hopeless the situation has become. Standing over them, the fighter repeats his demand for Drake's whereabouts while the wounded man can barely form words. He raises the knife over the captive's head and makes it clear that silence is no longer an option. A sudden impact interrupts the threat, as if something has struck in from outside the immediate fight. Broken and trembling, the captive finally gives up a lead, 13th Street. The black-haired fighter confirms the clue by identifying it as the territory of the biggest troop in the area. The viewers react with a mix of disbelief, mockery, and donations, treating the interrogation and beatdown as part of the show. He pointedly avoids engaging with the chat, more interested in the hunt than the commentary. Now that he has what he needs, he idly inspects the dagger and dismisses it as too short to be useful. He starts looking around the ruined room for a better weapon, treating the aftermath with casual ease. He spots something more suitable and decides on it immediately. He smashes through a barrier or container to seize the heavier weapon he wants. At once, a larger wave of enemies charges in, trying to overwhelm him by numbers. Armed with a long polearm, he swings first and turns their rush into another slaughter. His sweeping strike carves through the attackers in a broad, merciless arc. The force of the attack drives bodies down hard, ending the charge almost as soon as it began. When the dust settles, the staircase and hall are littered with fallen enemies, and he stands alone at the top as the clear victor. The polearm drips with fresh blood, underscoring how completely he has cut through the opposition. He reflects that he may have gone too far, having turned what should have been a simple confrontation into a massacre. Then a new voice breaks in with delighted laughter, praising his performance instead of fearing it. A strange blue light suddenly appears, signaling the arrival of someone or something powerful. The black-haired fighter snaps to attention as a blue glowing blade comes into view, revealing a new threat has entered the scene. The young fighter ducks as a projectile slams into the wall behind him, opening the battle with a lethal surprise attack. He immediately sharpens his focus, realizing the assault is far more dangerous than a simple exchange of blows. A storm of blades closes in from all directions, trapping him in a killing zone inside the ruined hall. Instead of panicking, he steadies his grip on the metal pipe and prepares to meet the barrage head-on. He moves through the rain of weapons with precise timing, refusing to give the attacker a clean hit. His defense becomes so exact that even the spectators are stunned by how completely he neutralizes the volley. From across the wrecked room, his opponent acknowledges the skill with calm approval rather than frustration. That praise turns into a challenge as the older man's confidence hardens into predatory intent. He introduces himself as Drake, a boss-level assassin, and tests whether the stranger can keep surviving this well. Drake escalates by unleashing chained blades and sweeping arcs, turning the battlefield itself into a moving trap. The attack pattern grows even more chaotic as weapons descend from above in a relentless cascade. The young man still reads the rhythm and catches another strike on his pipe with unnerving composure. He redirects a heavy spinning attack instead of absorbing it, using timing and leverage to break its momentum. Without pause, he follows through with a counterswing that tears through the opening he created. The counter batters aside multiple incoming blades, proving he can defend and retaliate at once. Drake's chained weapons crash into the floor around him, but the young fighter keeps slipping through the gaps. Even Drake is forced to admit the defense is absurdly good as his attacks keep getting turned away. The onlookers echo that disbelief, realizing the stranger can seemingly parry anything thrown at him. Intrigued, Drake stops pressing for a moment and asks the unknown fighter's name. The reply is simply Nameless, a title that makes his unreadable confidence feel even stranger. Drake accepts the answer with respect, deciding that someone this strong deserves a serious fight. That respect becomes resolve as he prepares to stop testing and start using everything he has. He declares that he will fight at full strength and summons more chained spearheads around himself. The weapons launch again, now with greater force and deadlier coordination. Nameless meets the renewed assault with another clean deflection, refusing to be overwhelmed. Drake shifts position and uses the chains to attack from changing angles, trying to break that perfect defense. One blade whips past Nameless' flank, showing that Drake is now probing for blind spots rather than brute forcing the clash. Another strike drops from above, layering vertical pressure onto the sweeping attacks. Drake spins the chains into a vortex around himself, creating a zone that is dangerous to approach and difficult to read. Nameless recognizes that the fight has changed. This weapon style is far more troublesome than the earlier dagger barrage. He realizes the chained weapon is the real reason no one can get close to Drake. With the spearheads dragging and circling near the ground, Drake controls both distance and footing at once. He openly credits the combat system for making assassination techniques this oppressive in direct battle. Seeing Nameless hesitate, Drake taunts him for staying back instead of committing. Then Drake charges first, deciding to force close combat on his own terms. Nameless intercepts the rush with his pipe, stopping Drake's blade at the instant of impact. He uses that brief clash to slip inside Drake's line and create a real chance to strike back. But a vertical wall of chain force erupts between them, cutting off the approach before it can become a finishing blow. Drake immediately resumes pressure from range, driving Nameless back under another coordinated barrage. The spectators begin to think the defense alone cannot win this, because Drake's combination leaves almost no opening to exploit. Nameless, however, stays calm and concludes that enduring this pattern is actually harder than facing many enemies at once. He recalls a sword technique built to cut through overwhelming numbers and starts adapting that idea to this duel. Instead of waiting, he commits to the answer he found: break through and close the distance before the chains can reset. As Drake raises his weapon and mocks the attempt, Nameless is already moving into the gap. Drake suddenly realizes he has exposed an opening, and that Nameless saw it instantly. A violent impact follows as Nameless counter lands through the narrow window Drake thought he controlled. Drake is jolted backward, his confidence shaken by a hit he did not expect anyone to earn. Nameless understands that a parry against a boss like Drake only buys a single strike, so he made that one strike count. Even with the chains still shielding Drake and making a clean finish difficult, Nameless has already broken the supposed impossibility of the matchup. With a faint, certain smile, he makes clear that the usual limits of Drake's weapon style simply do not apply to him. He explains that his confidence comes from landing clean, efficient strikes rather than relying on brute force. Calm and focused, he settles into the attack with no hesitation. Drawing on countless repetitions from his past life, he fixes his stance and plants his feet. He channels power from his lower body and raises his weapon into a high guard. The motion becomes precise and deliberate as he commits fully to the form. Wrapped in surging energy, he prepares a decisive overhead blow. His killing intent sharpens as the strike drops straight toward its target. He aims for the head, turning the attack into a clean execution. The blow lands with crushing force and smashes the enemy into the floor. Viewers erupt in shock, realizing he has just killed Drake with absurd ease. He reflects that the borrowed body felt unfamiliar at first, but that difference no longer matters. What matters is that his footwork still follows the same perfected logic. The twist of his torso remains exactly as he remembers it. Even the path of his arms and weapon can still be reproduced. By tuning every movement to its optimal form, he proves that a different body can still produce the same result. Before the moment can settle, chains whip through the air toward him. He notices the new threat instantly and reads the attack without panic. He evades as the chain strike slams into the ground where he stood. The surviving enemy, enraged, lashes out and reaches for him with murderous intent. The attacker surrounds him with chained blades and tries to finish him from every direction. He meets the incoming assault head-on, intercepting the chain with a fast upward swing. Without breaking rhythm, he drives forward to seize the initiative. He slips through the barrage and avoids being caught by a second hit. Spectators recognize that once he has read the pattern, the same trick will not work on him twice. He resets his footing in an instant, ready to counterattack again. As his weapon moves, he feels a fierce exhilaration, because combat is the one thing that still proves his former life was real. That realization sharpens into a grin as he fully embraces the fight. He unleashes another overwhelming strike, concentrating all his force into a single line. The impact drives weapons down into the floor and tears apart the enemy's defense. His opponent can only choke out a pained groan as the pressure becomes unbearable. He brings down the finishing blow and detonates the area in a burst of blood and force. The enemy collapses with his health emptied out. A system notice confirms Drake, boss of the disassembler gang, has been slain, and Nameless receives a shard of order. The audience explodes with praise, donations, and exaggerated titles, celebrating him as a rising assassin. Then he notices the viewer count, and is caught off guard by how high it has climbed. He struggles to understand when so many people started watching him. The number is even higher than his follower count, making the surge feel even stranger. He can only stare at the screen, quietly flustered by the sudden attention. A memory surfaces of someone once telling him that even if only one person watches, he should still give everything he has. Remembering that advice, he admits to himself that the recognition feels good. He wonders if this battle might have been his first truly clean victory, while viewers compare his skill to a completely different level from the rest. More donations and comments pour in, praising the way he forced the kill and replaying the most brutal moment. The chat keeps dissecting the fight and thanking him for the spectacle. Once the excitement settles, he says he has one question left to answer. Looking over the ruined hall and the bodies, he realizes the city guards still have not arrived. The viewers joke that guards in this world are useless, showing up only after the crime is over. Accepting that explanation, he decides there is no reason to stay any longer and prepares to leave. He steps out into the evening as the battle finally gives way to calm. Under the warm city lights, Nameless walks on from the scene of his victory. He reaffirms his identity to himself with a single name, Nameless. At sunset, the cloaked player stands over the aftermath of a completed job in a quiet town street. He notices someone approaching and turns his attention toward the voice calling out. The newcomer lowers her hood, revealing herself instead of hiding any longer. A striking blonde woman introduces herself as Christina and confirms she is the one who had been dealing with Drake. She offers him a pouch of money, explaining that his actions helped her people take a first step out from under oppression. Christina makes clear that the payment is both gratitude and a reward for what he has done. As he accepts it, the game acknowledges the gain in currency and reputation, confirming the quest's success. His viewers tease that he is getting rewarded even without a formal contract, while he brushes it off as something he did not do for money. When asked why he would refuse money, he casually explains that in this world basic needs are so available that wealth barely matters to him. With business settled, Christina wonders where she should go next, and he leaves the obvious answer unstated. She understands immediately and accepts that she now has to move on and decide her own path. Christina departs first, telling him they may meet again while pointedly calling him Nameless. He watches her leave across the town square, letting the encounter end on that note. Left alone, he awkwardly acknowledges the exchange and the strange title she used for him. Looking over the wreckage, he dryly wonders whether what just happened can even be called an assassination. His chat jokes that the whole thing was less a clean kill than a charm-filled mess, and he decides this is enough for one session. He announces that he has done everything he wanted today and is ready to log off. The viewers protest and beg him to keep playing, but he ignores the pressure and heads for the exit anyway. He signs off despite the complaints, promising only that there will be a next time. The stream ends in a burst of system effects as the game session closes. Back in reality, he comes out of immersion slowly, still carrying the mood of the game. He stretches in his gaming pod with relief after the long session. Then he realizes his roommate is sprawled on his bed, casually using his room like it belongs to him. Annoyed, he demands to know why his roommate is there at all. The roommate cheerfully admits he came to watch the stream and has been hanging around for a while. An argument breaks out over whose room it is, ending in a brief scuffle before they calm down. A little later, the tension has passed, and the streamer asks how the broadcast actually went. His roommate reports that the live audience was only around 440 viewers, though the chat was unusually active. Wanting to see for himself, the streamer snatches the phone away. He reviews clips from the stream, including the moment Drake was overwhelmed, to gauge how viewers interpreted it. The comments explain that Drake was so shaken he could barely speak, which only made the scene more memorable. More posts fixate on the mysterious shards of order, noting that even veteran players have never seen them before. Reading that, he realizes there is still no real information anywhere about the shards of order. He starts questioning what kind of item it could be if its only known use is destructive rampage. At the same time, he notices the backlash that comes with attention, as some forum users mock the sudden hype around him. His roommate shrugs it off, saying that once fans gather, haters inevitably follow. The streamer is unconvinced and wonders whether attention is really a good thing if it turns hostile. His roommate counters that this is not just a small stream anymore, and that the numbers outside the stream matter more. He points out that over 10,000 people are already lurking on the forums discussing him. That leaves the streamer with an uncomfortable conclusion. If he wants answers and influence, he may need to become even more famous. As he stands there thinking, a new post on the phone catches his eye. The forum thread has spiraled into absurd speculation, including a bizarre tangent involving someone named Alpaca. That name jolts him, because it is someone he actually recognizes. He finds a viral clip of Alpaca dramatically swearing loyalty to clear Drake's name, turning the whole incident into even bigger spectacle. Seeing that public vow, he immediately decides to hold Alpaca to it. He calls out to his roommate to confirm whether he knows the streamer Alpaca. The roommate says yes, they have collaborated before, and asks why. The streamer answers without hesitation that he needs a favor. The story shifts to a grassy field, signaling a move to Alpaca's side of events. Alpaca lies exhausted outdoors and groans as if this is far from the first time he has been dragged into trouble. After failing the bare hands challenge for the 13th time and getting mocked by viewers, the streamer bitterly admits defeat. Left stewing in humiliation, he curses the audience and regrets not having eliminated Drake by exploiting his earlier notoriety. His sulking is interrupted when something nearby draws his attention. He finds that fans have sent him a lobby mascot, an alpaca named Dayback. The absurd gift catches him off guard, and he awkwardly greets the mascot. Dayback immediately spits on him, turning the chat's amusement into outright ridicule. As the alpaca trots away, he resigns himself to the fact that this never gets any less humiliating. He tries to refocus, but a huge donation arrives demanding that he stop trying to impress his master and keep streaming until he clears Drake Rampage. That demand makes him wonder if someone actually beat the stage already, though he assumes it must be a joke. He opens the linked post about Drake Rampage to check for himself. At first he dismisses it as another fake meant to fool him, but the post is real. Someone uploaded proof of the first clear of nameless Drake Miuzu. Realizing Drake was truly killed, he is shaken and starts asking who could have done it. The uploader's title confirms the clearer is an anonymous player, and that single word hits him hard. Before he can process it, a new message notification pops up. Startled, he opens the message to see what this interruption is about. The sender's identity makes him freeze in alarm. The message comes from Kim Tae-woo, who accuses him of using a friend's account to clear Nameless and warns that he is not to mention Dayback on stream. Elsewhere, the scene shifts to the headquarters of Moviesoft Korea. Inside, the company president leisurely enjoys his coffee. This is Eve Fimo, the CEO of Moviesoft Korea. He is still savoring the moment when the calm is broken. An employee bursts in urgently, forcing the president to drop his relaxed mood. When asked what the problem is, the employee reveals that something serious has happened in the game. He reports that one of the rulers has been taken down. Worse, it was not a normal victory but a full rampage clear. That finally gets the president's full attention, and he demands to know which ruler fell. The answer is Drake. The revelation is almost laughable because Drake had been considered the weakest among the rulers. The president shrugs it off as overdue, saying someone was bound to deal with Drake eventually. When the employee worries that people may start investigating the Shard of Order, the president tells him not to overthink it. The employee pushes back, reminding him that the system was specifically designed to stop players from reaching that reward easily. The hidden item in question is Shard of Order, a special reward earned only by defeating a ruler of Alteon through a specific route. It cannot be traded or sold, and some rulers cannot be cleared at all without a required skill path. Because that skill is still locked behind a difficult route, ordinary players should not be able to chain these clears. The whole design was meant to delay access and keep the system under control. Meanwhile, the mysterious player keeps grinding despite warnings that he has been playing for over 100 hours. Online discussion explodes with people obsessing over how to unlock the crucial skill and whether anyone else can obtain it yet. Even so, the hidden player remains focused, suggesting this breakthrough is only the beginning. Back in the office, the president starts to dismiss the concern by saying the player was probably just lucky. Then he catches a contradiction and abruptly stops. He realizes the employee only knew the player had been streaming because he had been watching streams during work. The employee panics and begs not to have his pay docked. Annoyed, the president vents his frustration but is more troubled now by the larger implication. For the first time, he seriously wonders whether players might actually collect all the shards. Later, the topic shifts to a proposed collaboration. A dark-haired man reminds Suhan that the collab they discussed earlier is happening today, surprising him. Suhan checks the notice and realizes Alpaca is publicly teaming up with Zero Puka for a live broadcast, apparently without trying to squeeze out rookie discovery content first. The other man tells him he is misunderstanding the situation. He reveals that this appearance is not a simple guest spot at all, but something much bigger. A flashy announcement reveals that the long-awaited Masked Master is finally being brought in. The blonde streamer gets excited, arguing that anyone famous enough to draw that much attention must be worth seeing. His darker-haired companion dismisses the hype, caring only about the league and treating everything else as worthless. The blonde man, lounging around, asks if he can borrow his friend's capsule later when the guest arrives. That request is shut down immediately because the guest's sync rate is supposedly too low for the expensive setup, which sounds absurd for someone being called a master. Still curious, the blonde streamer decides to stay in his room and watch the collaboration until the visitor actually shows up. As he watches on his phone, he realizes the guest's behavior feels nothing like the fearsome image people built around him. He starts connecting rumors and wonders if the masked player's in-game brutality might reflect a genuinely dangerous person in real life. Instead, the stream presents someone comically overwhelmed and begging not to be pushed too far, completely clashing with the monster he expected. The blonde streamer immediately regrets arranging the collaboration, sensing he may have invited a disaster. A sudden interruption snaps him out of his thoughts when the guest finally arrives. He goes to greet the visitor politely, only to freeze when the man before him looks nothing like the terrifying figure he imagined. The newcomer introduces himself as Jin Seojun, and the blonde streamer is thrown off by how ordinary and harmless he seems compared with the edited persona from the videos. Seojun's confusion about even basic streamer jargon makes it clear the public image built around him was heavily manufactured, deepening the blonde man's disbelief. The blonde streamer mentally rages over how much deceptive editing went into making this guy look intimidating in the promotional material. Before the awkwardness can settle, another friend arrives with Seojun, and the blonde streamer recognizes Taewoo from before. Trying to recover, the blonde host cheerfully starts leading them inside. Seojun hesitates at the entrance, visibly unsure as he steps into the house. Inside, the place looks far more refined than expected, with a clean, carefully arranged interior. The layout makes it obvious the owner keeps daily life and gaming strictly separated, reinforcing the image of a disciplined veteran streamer. Their host offers coffee and seats, while Taewoo quickly moves to help as if he already belongs there. The host immediately starts teasing Taewoo, and Seojun notices how easily the two fall into familiar banter. Another man appears, drawing Seojun's attention and shifting the room's focus. He greets Seojun calmly, setting a more serious tone. The man introduces himself as Lee Suhan, Alpaca's manager and editor, and Seojun introduces himself in return. Their handshake lands with unexpected tension, as if both are measuring the other from the first touch. Seojun immediately senses the exchange has become a quiet contest for control. Suhan praises Seojun's skill but points out that his low sync rate should make that level of play impossible, exposing the contradiction everyone has been circling. He presses further by noting that Seojun also claimed to have only recently returned to the game. Seojun admits there is more to the story, but keeps it partly hidden. While the others hover nearby, he finally reveals that he actually played the league 7 years earlier. That timeline shocks the blonde streamer, who instantly realizes this is much bigger than a simple comeback story. Asked what rank he had back then, Seojun answers with an unimpressive silver, making the claim sound even stranger. Suhan refuses to accept that explanation, insisting no one jumps from that level to this level after such a long break without something else going on. Seojun responds by proposing a direct match in the training grounds, ready to prove himself immediately. When questioned about dragging Seojun into a test so suddenly, Suhan admits he wants to judge the man's real skill with his own eyes. Taewoo reacts with amused disbelief at Suhan's confidence. Then he drops the joke and warns his master in earnest that fighting Seojun would be a terrible idea. Suhan takes that as a challenge and asks whether Taewoo really thinks he would lose. Taewoo clarifies that losing is not the point, implying the danger lies in what Seojun's ability would reveal. Seojun shifts uneasily, sensing that the conversation is approaching something he has tried to keep buried. Taewoo asks for secrecy before saying more, making it clear the truth could not be casually exposed. He warns that if Suhan wants recognition in the training grounds, he should stop at level 10, because going further would uncover too much. That warning makes the others realize they may be standing in front of the hidden identity behind the mysterious shapeless AI. Seojun understands exactly where their suspicions are heading and braces himself as his anonymity starts to collapse. A demonstration begins, and Seojun attacks with explosive speed and precision against an AI opponent. His strike control is so exact that the clash itself becomes a display of overwhelming technical mastery. The force and accuracy of the exchange leave visible destruction behind, proving this is far beyond ordinary play. Watching the footage, the blonde streamer and Suhan are stunned by how absurdly skilled Seojun really is. By the end, they can only conclude that the supposedly shapeless AI was a brilliant creation because Seojun's real play is monstrous enough to make the deception believable. The group recalls that Seojun once lost so completely that he could only endure the beating without landing a single hit. A brutal boast from that old match leaves the younger viewers stunned by how overwhelming the gap must have been. The room erupts into excited teasing, with some admiring the line and others suddenly realizing how intimidating this club's seniors really are. Seojun quietly absorbs the name being brought up, his mood turning serious. When someone calls him, he turns back toward the others. A senior steps in front of Seojun and immediately takes control of the moment. He declares that from now on, the relationship between them will change. The others try to interrupt before he can go too far, sensing trouble. Ignoring them, the senior abruptly announces that he will treat Seojun as his senior instead, shocking everyone in the room. The bystanders scramble to contain the chaos before the situation gets any stranger. Seojun is left momentarily blank, unsure how to respond to such a bizarre reversal. The senior eagerly explains that anyone strong enough to beat him earns his respect, so he wants Seojun to let him act comfortably around him. He insists that age means less than skill, arguing that someone with Seojun's level deserves deference regardless of being younger. The others awkwardly try to smooth things over, pretending this is all normal. That act fails immediately when one of them points out how pleased the senior looks, exposing how sincere he is. A stray comment about 7 years ago suddenly makes one of the boys connect Seojun to an old player from the past. He realizes with a jolt that Seojun may be the same backline player from back then. Before he can chase that thought further, another senior cuts in and redirects him. He reminds him that his stream is about to start, and that he needs to get ready now. That reminder snaps him back to schedule, and he hurries off after realizing how late it already is. Even so, the blonde boy lingers on the possibility that Seojun might really be that person, then forces himself to stop overthinking it. Seojun agrees to head out as well, while the others scramble to wrap up and follow. The overenthusiastic senior immediately tries to escort Seojun personally, proudly offering to take him to his capsule set up like a devoted attendant. His exaggerated devotion sends him crashing into embarrassment, while Seojun simply moves on. The blonde boy can only stare, stunned by how far the senior is taking this. Meanwhile, the stream goes live and viewers flood in at once, already waiting for Alpaca. Alpaca greets his audience brightly and slips into his usual cheerful streamer persona. Watching the chat, he immediately recognizes that everyone knows exactly what day this is and has come for a specific reason. The viewers openly admit they are there to see the promised event rather than him, and even the people around the monitor find that funny. He tries to act wounded, but the chat bluntly confirms they are really here for Alpaca's promised showdown. The mention of Yellowtail name makes him perk up, thrilled that a familiar viewer has shown up too. That excitement vanishes when he reads that Yellowtail is only here to watch the clear or die promise be enforced. He lashes out at the teasing and threatens a ban, trying to recover authority over the chat. When viewers ask why the promise will not happen today, he smugly prepares an explanation. He starts to reveal the reason, building suspense for his excuse. With theatrical intensity, he declares that today they are doing something else entirely. Instead of the promised punishment, he announces a rampage run, turning the stream into a hype event of his own making. He doubles down by promising to introduce a professor who will teach the rampage session. The audience is baffled by the dramatic setup but plays along, wondering what absurd entrance is coming next. He grandly calls for streamer Jin Seojun to come out, presenting him like a special guest under a spotlight. When no one appears, his confidence falters and confusion sets in. The chat immediately notices the delay and starts asking why Seojun is still only watching on his phone instead of joining. As the viewers joke that the collaboration has already collapsed, Alpaca panics and realizes something has gone wrong. A message from Jin Seojun reveals the problem. Alpaca had the date wrong and thought the collaboration was tomorrow. Seojun clarifies that this was never supposed to be a phone call and tells him to check his messages. Alpaca opens the chat, still not understanding what he is about to find. He discovers a pile of unread messages from Jin Seojun and freezes as the scale of his mistake hits him. The people watching nearby are just as stunned, staring at the screen in disbelief. The chat explodes with laughter as Alpaca sits there shattered, his humiliation now fully public. Even the onlookers can only wonder whether he is always this hopeless. The stream opens with Alpaca already flustered, as if he has been struggling before the guest even properly arrives. Jin Seojun finally joins the broadcast, apologizes for being late, and introduces himself to the audience. Alpaca brushes it off and reminds Seojun that, despite his recent feat, he is still basically a beginner. The chat immediately pounces on Alpaca for trying to act like a teacher after being shown up. Alpaca realizes the audience is exploding with excitement, and that the stream is surging. The viewership races toward 20,000 while donations and mockery pile onto him, turning his own show against him. Overwhelmed, Alpaca concludes that his viewers treat bullying the streamer as part of the entertainment. He reflects that every streamer shapes their own chat culture, whether by ruling through constant pressure or by setting strict boundaries. In contrast, some communities stay tightly controlled and clean, showing how different a stream can feel depending on its host. Alpaca admits he prefers a looser atmosphere, even if it means taking more abuse from chat. Seojun stays quiet and reserved while the viewers keep roasting Alpaca instead of him. Trying to recover control, Alpaca abruptly shifts the conversation forward. He credits Seojun for taking down Drake and says that spared him from harsher ridicule. A donor jokes that if Seojun can really clear that content, Alpaca should accept him as a master and keep streaming until he beats Rampage Drake too, which only makes Alpaca more defensive. Seojun laughs at Alpaca's misery, and Alpaca complains that if Seojun had failed, he would have been the one getting mocked instead. Seojun agrees and lightly points out that Alpaca does bear some responsibility for provoking this situation. He sharpens the tease by reminding everyone that Alpaca loudly declared Drake Rampage impossible right before Seojun cleared it on his second day playing. That remark gives the chat fresh ammunition, and Alpaca can only stew while viewers repeat the humiliation back at him. Seojun keeps talking comfortably in front of the crowd, showing none of the nerves Alpaca expected from a newcomer. Watching him enjoy the attention, Alpaca decides it is better to stop resisting and let Seojun carry the mood. He accepts the blame for the earlier mess and jokingly begs Professor Seojun to save him. With the atmosphere reset, Alpaca announces that the stream will have two main segments with Seojun. First, they will enter the game together so Seojun can coach him during a run. The second segment remains secret for now, while Alpaca frames the first as a challenge to keep pushing Rampage Drake until he succeeds. When the topic turns to skills, Alpaca casually admits he has barely invested in them. Seojun is baffled that anyone would still be grinding barehanded with zero skill development. Alpaca makes it worse by confessing he has never used those skills at all, and is not even sure whether they matter. That answer leaves Alpaca looking ridiculous, exposing how badly flustered he gets when pressed. Seojun simply asks why, forcing Alpaca to justify himself. Alpaca explains that he ignored the skill because it looked underwhelming at first glance, so he never bothered to test it. The chat turns on him again, mocking him for acting tough while making such a lazy decision. As the viewer count climbs to 25,000, Alpaca feels the entire broadcast slipping out of his hands but tries to keep everyone watching a little longer. He moves to the hidden second segment and reveals that it is connected to that neglected skill. To set it up, he shows the audience a video and asks whether they have seen anything like it before. The footage shows a sword clash in which one weapon meets another at a precise point. On impact, the struck blade breaks apart instantly instead of merely being blocked. The sequence makes clear that the attack is not brute force but a deliberate strike at a structural flaw. A system prompt identifies this as the hidden skill weak point detection and reveals its unlock condition, breaking weapons by hitting their grain. Since the viewers are confused, Alpaca starts explaining the concept from the ground up. He defines a weak point as a place where an object can be cut or broken most easily. Applied to weapons, that means every blade or tool has a grain that can become a fatal vulnerability once found. He adds that only 2 such grains have been discovered so far, making the mechanic extremely obscure. One example is the rapier that was broken by accident in the video they just watched. The other is a longsword grain uncovered through a side quest NPC rather than normal play. Because the skill is still unreleased, Alpaca admits that almost nobody actually knows how it works. What matters now is the rule behind that grain, which Alpaca cannot explain on his own. He excitedly reveals that Seojun claims he understands the principle behind it. The chat immediately rejects that idea, assuming Alpaca is bluffing far beyond reason. Alpaca tries to calm the uproar while insisting they should at least hear him out. He ends by proposing a bet on whether Seojun can identify the hidden condition for the grain during today's stream. Treble Stream gains a channel point system, turning viewer attention into a growing pile of rewards. As viewers watch, points accumulate, and chat immediately starts treating them like betting currency for whatever chaos the stream will bring. The system is explained as a prediction game, but the real draw is obvious. Viewers love wagering on the broadcast's outcome. A prediction opens on whether Hell will find 1, 2, 3, or even 4 grains by pure luck during today's stream, and the host urges everyone to place their bets. Watching this, the protagonist asks what safe bets and underdog bets even mean. His blonde companion explains that the safe side is the likely outcome with a smaller return, while the underdog is unlikely but pays far more if it hits. Seeing the odds, the protagonist realizes his own choice is the reckless long shot and checks whether that is really the right move. His companion confirms it, and points out that betting on 4 or more would return 100-fold if it somehow came true. The protagonist follows that advice, and the system accepts his absurd gamble, effectively congratulating him for committing to the craziest option. Confident in the outcome, he predicts that this bet will multiply his points 100 times over. The story then shifts to a new segment, the launch of the assassination squad, at a moonlit estate. Violence has already broken out there, leaving blood on the stone ground. One young man is down and struggling to breathe, clearly overpowered. Standing over him with a sword, Lewis Neville holds complete control of the situation. The defeated youth admits he misjudged his opponent and begs the young master to stop. Instead of mercy, he tries to flee in panic. Lewis coldly offers him a chance to live only if he can escape. From hiding, the protagonist and his blonde ally witness the scene and identify the swordsman as Lewis Neville, the ruler of the Northeast Sun, and the same man seen in the earlier video. They confirm they have found their target and the person connected to the footage they were investigating. The blonde ally suggests testing Lewis's ability before making any move. To do that, he produces an ordinary sword, emphasizing that the feat in the video could not be dismissed as the result of some special weapon. He argues that even if someone knows exactly where to strike, reproducing that recorded attack is not easy. His point is that copying the result from the video already requires skill beyond simple imitation. Then he notices something that sharply changes his understanding. Lewis finishes the fleeing victim with a single decisive strike. The body drops, proving Lewis can kill cleanly and instantly. At that moment, the protagonist receives a quest tied to weak point detection, requiring him to destroy 10 weapons by striking their weak spots. The blonde observer concludes that Lewis is an expert because he ended the fight in one blow, while the protagonist remains unconvinced. He argues that one clean kill proves nothing by itself, but the blonde ally says the important truth only became obvious just now. What he has confirmed is that the protagonist's theory about weak points is correct. Even as chat jokes and complains, the blonde ally tries to calm everyone and keep them focused on what they are seeing. Before they can continue, an alarm goes up. An intruder has appeared. The protagonist decides words are no longer enough and says he will prove his claim directly. He states the principle plainly. A weak point is something that can be broken. That insight triggers a memory of a lesson from his past life, when he had watched Shaolin monks and learned to perceive what martial skill alone could not show him. He recalls that even without seeing perfectly, he could still grasp the hidden structure behind an object or technique. The key, he realizes, is not merely the fighter's intent but the purpose embedded by the maker. Applied to a shield, that means reading the creator's design to find the line where it is meant to fail. While onlookers think he has gone still or given up, he closes his eyes to focus on that hidden flaw. He meets an armored guard head-on, blade against shield. A glowing crack appears across the shield exactly where he identified its weakness. He follows through with a precise strike that drives the fracture open. The guard is left exposed as the shield's defense collapses. The blonde ally watches in stunned silence as the theory becomes reality. The crack races through the shield until it can no longer hold together. The shield explodes apart, and the protagonist bursts through the shattered defense. Fragments fly into the night under the moonlight, making the destruction impossible to miss. The blonde ally can only stare, overwhelmed by how absurdly effective the technique is. As the protagonist walks on through the wreckage, his companion erupts in disbelief while even the chat is left shaken by what they just witnessed. The blonde streamer is stunned that Jin Seojun located a gyro even with his eyes closed, and the audience immediately starts joking that he must be something inhuman. As the blonde man rushes up to him in disbelief, Seojun stays calm, making the impossible result feel even more unsettling. When accusations of a staged broadcast appear, Seojun barely reacts, while the blonde host pauses to process how ugly the suspicion has become. The host snaps back hard, insisting this is not scripted and defending the legitimacy of what just happened. He admits even he doubted Seojun a moment ago, which only makes the result feel more absurd now that it proved real. The chat explodes into outrage, memes, and conspiracy theories, with viewers treating the miracle as either fraud or reality breaking in front of them. Seojun coolly reminds everyone that he already told them to trust him and bet heavily, though many realize that advice came too late. Even while the crowd spirals, Seojun senses the betting pattern is wrong and starts examining the audience reaction instead of celebrating. He pulls up the prediction board to inspect exactly how viewers divided their bets on his performance. The numbers confirm that only a tiny minority believed he would find 4 or more gyro, despite what he had just shown. Seojun points out that the entire chat is now piling into that tiny outcome, and the viewers realize he has caught on to their behavior. He mocks the crowd for treating shared failure as comfort, exposing how they hide behind group pessimism. Watching him toy with the audience while keeping the stream lively, the blonde host realizes Seojun understands entertainment, as well as games. That realization deepens into respect as the host sees Seojun has natural streaming instincts, not just unusual skill. The host decides he no longer needs to carry the show alone and starts letting Seojun take control of the room. He openly asks Seojun to explain how he pulled it off, turning the stream from spectacle into a lesson. Seojun begins modestly, calling himself an ordinary man in his 20s, while the audience immediately refuses to accept that framing. The host is so thrown by the claim of being average that he can only stare in disbelief. He rejects the false modesty outright, convinced there is nothing ordinary about Seojun anymore. To prove the point, he dramatically introduces Seojun by name and presents him as the real deal rather than a manufactured persona. He declares that what viewers are seeing is Seojun's actual face and actual ability, with no editing or character work involved. The reveal only fuels the audience's fascination, as they start praising the creator for making someone this absurdly gifted. A donation pushes the conversation in a cruder direction, with the viewer loudly fixating on Seojun's body instead of his skill. The host freezes for a beat, caught off guard by how suddenly the stream has derailed. He tries to shut the comment down before it can be processed, but the donation has already landed and the chat senses trouble. Seojun notices the host trying to bury the message and calmly tells him to let it go, refusing to make a scene over it. The host reluctantly agrees to ignore it once, though he is clearly not happy about letting it slide. Even so, the chat keeps teasing the issue, forcing the host to drag the stream back toward the actual game. He punctuates that reset with a sharp clap, signaling a clean return to business. Back on topic, he asks again how Seo-jun did it, and Seo-jun finally starts to explain his method. The host listens with innocent curiosity, expecting some hidden trick or special perception. Seo-jun pauses just long enough to build suspense before giving his answer. He reveals that he was not literally seeing the knots at all, but simply knew where they would be because he understood the game that well. The host is left blank with shock as the explanation swerves from supernatural talent to pure analysis. Both the host and the audience struggle to accept that the secret behind the miracle might be nothing more exotic than insight. The chat erupts with laughter and admiration, while the host mentally collapses under how casually Seo-jun just reframed everything. Recovering, the host begs him to share at least a little of that wisdom instead of leaving everyone behind. Seo-jun explains that he approached the problem by asking what the developers intended players to do in that situation. The host repeats the idea in amazement, realizing Seo-jun is reading design intent itself rather than reacting to surface mechanics. Seo-jun backs it up with a replay, showing a fight where the obvious move would have been to use parry. He explains that parry was only there to teach a system and that using it against those knots would actually be the wrong choice. Breaking the encounter down, he shows that knots are disposable trash mobs, so the most efficient answer is simply to trust basic attacks and rampage parry instead of overthinking them. He concludes that the knot mechanic exists for boss fights, not for every ordinary enemy, which is why players misread the encounter. He adds that this matters even more against tougher enemies like Drake, where misunderstanding the mechanic becomes costly. From that logic, Seo-jun announces his next goal. He is going straight after a ruler. The audience panics at the escalation, begging him to farm easier knot enemies first because they assume this leap will end badly. Seo-jun only smiles at their fear and gives the host a playful nickname, showing he is fully enjoying their anxiety. He proposes opening a new prediction market, turning his next reckless move into another test for the viewers. The new bet asks whether Jin Seo-jun will break a ruler's equipment today, raising the stakes from survival to domination. Bathed in confidence, Seo-jun tells everyone to understand what is coming and simply follow his lead. A violent shock tears through the hall, announcing that the long-awaited clash has begun. Someone charges straight into the destruction without hesitation, closing in on the enemy. Driven by grief, the attacker vows to kill his opponent and avenge his son. The man is identified as ruler Richard Neville, leader of the royalist faction, and he commits fully to the strike. Richard swings hard, trying to end the fight in a single decisive blow. His target slips through the attack and counters with unnerving speed from above. A strange yellow energy begins to crackle around the exchange, hinting that something abnormal is interfering with the duel. Richard realizes too late that the younger fighter has appeared behind him, overturning his read of the battle. From above, a blonde observer notes that Richard's weapon should have hidden the blind spot, so the counter should not have been possible. Unable to accept what he is seeing, the observer insists the fighter should not have found that opening. The fighter proves he was aware of the hidden angle all along, exposing that Richard's trick failed. The observer frantically tries to understand how the fighter saw through it, while chat reactions swing between mockery and disbelief. A warning from the stream tells him to watch his back, and he recalls that Richard's weapon is made from a special material. He realizes the key flaw in his earlier assumption. If the weapon is unusual enough, it may not even have a visible knot or telltale weak point. The fighter hears that conclusion and treats it as a challenge rather than a setback. He focuses, letting the yellow power surge through him as he prepares to test the weapon directly. Calmly, he decides to verify the truth for himself in combat. He raises his blade and brings down another heavy attack at Richard. Richard blocks again with the same weapon, relying on the same defense as before. The fighter calls out that repeated trick and makes clear it will not save Richard this time. His strike lands with concentrated force on a precise point instead of merely battering the guard. The blow breaks through Richard's defense and drives into him, proving the fighter found the hidden vulnerability anyway. The blonde observer erupts in triumph, thrilled that the impossible read actually worked. Yellow lines race across the fighter's body as the ability continues analyzing and adapting in real time. Richard is flung away, his advantage shattered as the younger man takes control of the fight. An internal system display shows the analysis reaching completion, with the final successful readings stacking toward a full lock. Now composed and confident, the fighter stands amid floating debris while Richard reels in the background. The observer, however, can barely process what he just witnessed and spirals into stunned confusion. Richard is left battered and disbelieving, while the fighter remains standing at a distance as if the outcome was inevitable. The system confirms a new skill has been unlocked: weak point detection. The fighter immediately understands what changed. He admits his earlier reasoning was wrong. The real lesson is that the weapon did have a weak point after all, just not the obvious kind he first expected. With the battle over, the scene abruptly cuts away from the weapon and the arena. The fighter wakes from the simulation capsule, exhausted but relieved to be back in the real world. A staff member greets him enthusiastically and praises his performance. They exchange formal thanks, each insisting the other deserves the credit. The staffer gushes that even the capsule must have benefited from the experience, leaving the fighter quietly uncomfortable. Before he can leave, he notices someone else waiting nearby. A blond young man lounging with snacks reveals he stayed behind specifically to catch him after the session. When asked where he is going, the fighter realizes he has just walked into something unexpected. At the same time, a flood of system-like messages demands that Sejun be brought out immediately, as if an audience is clamoring for him. The blond man tries to calm the uproar, but the crowd of voices only turns on him and tells him to be quiet. A blue mascot-like figure literally shuts him up, cutting off his attempt to manage the situation. Silenced in his chair, he can only stare as events move ahead without him. Once free to speak, he announces with a grin that the guest is ready now. He theatrically welcomes Jin Seo-jun, presenting the moment like a grand reveal. The door opens, building anticipation for the introduction. Inside waits a bizarre audience of blue square-faced figures, and the blonde host greets the newcomer with smug satisfaction. The reveal lands. Seo-jun is being introduced in person to a streamer-themed setting, where he is framed as the newest featured guest. During the stream, the host's friend teases that the editor is unexpectedly handsome, putting him on the spot. The chat immediately turns that into a wave of exaggerated praise and mockery, joking about his looks and picking apart his face. The editor tries to laugh it off, but the comments keep pressing him, refusing to let the joke die. The viewers finally back off by insisting they watch for the content, though the editor is already emotionally knocked out. Embarrassed, he slips away from the camera while the stream continues without him. His streamer friend casually explains that he has gone to prepare dinner, since they are all eating together after the broadcast. The stream keeps rolling, and a large donation arrives from a viewer calling him Appa, catching everyone's attention. Faced with open flirting, he awkwardly thanks the donor and blurts out a nervous question about whether the admirer is actually a woman. That only gives the chat more material, and they pile on with teasing, innuendo, and more playful calls of Appa. Another big donation lands, and his patience visibly starts to wear thin. The audience shifts from flirting to gameplay curiosity, asking for proof of his skill and praising the earlier match. He responds by activating weak point detection, revealing the serious ability behind his reputation. The skill manifests as a precise combat technique that identifies a vulnerable line to break an enemy's gear. Its effect is explained as a decisive strike that can destroy equipment once the marked line is hit. When chat tries to pry into his rank and class, he refuses to reveal them and instead redirects viewers to keep watching if they want answers. He opens a Q&A segment, inviting broader questions while keeping his more important secrets hidden. Asked about his training, he gives a plain answer that he mostly just runs. When someone asks why he chose the Assassination Squad for his first stream, he credits a friend's recommendation. Meanwhile, dinner is being prepared, and the focus shifts from the stream to the meal waiting off camera. One of the friends eagerly claims responsibility for taking the day off, clearly proud to be involved. The group gathers around the food while chat realizes the mysterious roommate has been there all along. The editor explains that he and his roommate have been close since high school and now live together. That revelation shocks the viewers, who suddenly understand that the famous roommate is Seo-jun. The chat explodes over the identity reveal, treating Seo-jun's presence like a legendary surprise guest appearance. The people in the room are left baffled by how intensely the viewers are reacting to something that feels ordinary to them. A donation unlocks a travel clip, and the streamer quickly uses it before anyone can stop him. Later, in a quieter mood, he offers to tell the audience a funny story about living with his friend. He begins by saying his roommate is usually fine, but every so often does something absurdly clueless. As an example, he recounts catching him washing a phone with soap because he thought being waterproof meant it could be scrubbed clean. He follows with another story about asking him to cool down a game capsule, which the roommate accepted without question. The punchline is that he later found him crouched beside the capsule, trying to cool it with a tiny handheld fan. The storyteller concludes that his roommate is hopelessly strange, even as the room laughs at the absurdity. At dinner, the teasing continues in person, with the others joking around as the meal winds down. Once the food is finished, someone politely thanks the host for the meal. The group also thanks Seo-jun for joining the collaboration, and the appreciation around the table becomes more sincere. Alpaca admits he learned a lot from Seo-jun, making the collab feel meaningful rather than just entertaining. That leads to a new suggestion. Seo-jun should consider starting his own iTube channel. They tell him that if he does, the first thing he will need is a good editor. The remark lands heavily, signaling that someone at the table has a specific person in mind. Alpaca offers to introduce Seo-jun to someone suitable if he is interested. Seo-jun is caught off guard and asks who exactly Alpaca means. The scene shifts outside as Seo-jun steps away with a drink, taking time to think. Alone on the balcony, he relaxes with a beer and admits the suggestion is tempting. He seriously wonders whether he should start an iTube channel after all. As he reflects, the dinner conversation replays in his mind. In that memory, Alpaca encourages him by saying his stream could become even bigger. The appeal is not just fame but solid income, making the idea practical as well as flattering. But Alpaca also warns that success in capsule games depends heavily on having a rare, capable editor. That reminder leads Seo-jun to ask how Soo-han ended up becoming Alpaca's editor in the first place. Soo-han begins to answer by saying he started as an office worker before chance connected him to one of Alpaca's streams. A blonde streamer named Alpaca is introduced as someone whose talent was obvious, even though his original channel had been neglected and left unfinished. His online identity begins to take shape as a small but growing streaming presence. The narrator explains that he approached Alpaca first because he believed the abandoned channel could still be revived. Looking back on those early days, he recalls that Alpaca was still just a minor streamer, and he had even quit his job to commit to this gamble. When asked why he would risk that much, he answers that he did it out of certainty rather than impulse. He had been convinced from the start that Alpaca was destined to become huge. That confidence lingers into the present as he reflects alone under the evening sky. Standing on his balcony with a drink, he weighs what it really takes to succeed as a streamer, and recognizes how uncertain that path is. Even while recalling how hard it is to build an audience, his real ambition remains fixed on winning in the Rios competition. He remembers that he originally meant to quit streaming once he obtained the capsule he needed. Instead, streaming became unexpectedly enjoyable. What began as a practical plan turned into something personal, because he grew attached to joking around and spending time with other people. That realization leaves him quietly confronting feelings he had not wanted to name. With the beer in his hand, he finally wonders if what he had really been carrying was loneliness. He admits to himself that he probably was lonely after all. Looking out at the blossoming tree below, his thoughts drift back toward the life he can no longer return to. He compares recovering memories of his past life to seeing a home he longs for but can never truly go back to. The memory of that unreachable past deepens his sense of distance from where he once belonged. He cuts off the sentiment before it can swallow him and decides to clear his head by going to the gym for the first time in a while. The next day, he heads out under a bright sky with that decision made. At the gym, sparring is already underway as he steps back into that world. Inside the ring, one boxer lands a clean body shot and shows clear control of the exchange. The fighter in blue keeps his guard and composure, looking far more capable than the others around him. Observers note that the instructor has been under stress lately, yet everyone he spars with still ends up losing to him. Before that thread can continue, a younger fighter calls out to his master for attention. The newcomer, Lee Dong-soo of Team Freeple, complains that endless treadmill work is not what he came for. His coach shuts down the whining, reminding him he has barely been there 2 weeks and still needs conditioning. Dong-soo insists he is already a pro and wants real combat, but the coach bluntly tells him this is reality, not a game world built around his ego. Even so, Dong-soo argues that he came for genuine experience and grumbles that at this rate he will still be stuck on basic training by next year. His frustration boils over into melodramatic self-pity as he imagines himself trapped in endless running. He finally blurts out what he really wants: actual live sparring, forcing his coach to deal with the same demand yet again. The coach relents and agrees to let him do a light spar, which instantly sends Dong-soo into celebration. Given permission, Dong-soo eagerly asks if he can choose his own opponent. He starts boasting that nobody in the gym can beat him anyway and invites anyone to step up. That bravado falters when he notices the boxer from the ring more clearly. He turns his full attention toward that fighter, suddenly less carefree than before. Seeing the blue corner boxer standing over a fallen opponent, Dong-soo realizes this is the same man who dominated the ring moments ago. He recognizes him from somewhere and begins connecting the face to a video he has seen. He remembers a friend repeatedly hyping up that fighter's footage until he finally watched it himself. The memory includes even Shin Ha-yeon being impressed by the man's performance, which gives the video extra weight in Dong-soo's mind. Even with that reputation attached, Dong-soo tries to steady himself and act unimpressed. He claims he honestly did not think the streamer in the video was all that good. Someone else voices the more important question: how a mere small-time streamer ended up in a place like this. That question lands sharply on the man being discussed, drawing his attention. Dong-soo is startled by the possibility that the streamer and the boxer are indeed the same person. He hurriedly tries to play it cool while glancing back toward the ring and wondering if he is close enough to be noticed. When his coach asks whether he has chosen an opponent yet, Dong-soo suddenly loses all of his earlier confidence. Before he can make another reckless move, the coach pulls him in and tells him to listen carefully. He physically forces Dong-soo to focus and drills the real lesson into him. Sparring is not about knocking someone out, but about checking your own technique and improving. Dong-soo can only sweat through the lecture, his bravado replaced by anxious silence. Seo-jun sizes up the situation at the gym and decides he can handle a sparring match. Nearby, the others fuss over a red-haired newcomer and warn him to behave and not get carried away. Before Seo-jun can settle in, someone asks if that newcomer can be matched with him instead. The request catches the group off guard, but they confirm that Seo-jun is exactly who the boy wants. The gym members immediately get excited, since plenty of them would love a chance to test themselves against Seo-jun. The red-haired boy politely introduces himself by asking whether it is rude to challenge someone he has never met. The answer is a joking yes, but the greeting goes through anyway. Seo-jun watches from a distance as the newcomer is brought over to him. When Seo-jun hears the boy wants to spar, he checks if he understood correctly. The boy eagerly confirms, already knowing Seo-jun by name, and making clear he has specifically come for him. He reveals he watched Seo-jun's stream, asks permission to call him Hyung, and Seo-jun casually accepts and agrees to begin. They step into the ring together, turning the meeting into a formal test. Once geared up, Seo-jun waits for the boy to say what is really on his mind. The challenger starts with praise, admitting Seo-jun is impressive at games, but he immediately undercuts it by declaring that, in his view, he is still better. Seo-jun takes the boast in stride and asks the more important question of who this boy actually is. The question leaves the challenger baffled, because he expected his reputation to speak for itself. He is stunned that Seo-jun does not recognize him as the so-called god of games. Trying to save face, he reminds himself that Seo-jun only started recently, while privately wondering why someone important noticed a nobody like him. He promises Seo-jun will understand after he wins, and Seo-jun accepts the challenge without much emotion. Confident he is facing a beginner, the red-haired boy decides not to go all out. Seo-jun quietly echoes that promise and says he will also be polite and take it easy. That confidence lasts only until Seo-jun's punch comes in so fast and hard that the boy realizes too late what taking it easy really means. The story then shifts away from the gym to the city outside. Later, Seo-jun is approached by his father, who brings up the spar again. His father remarks that Seo-jun could have held back more, identifying himself as Jin Ha-jun, a hardcore PC gamer. Seo-jun dismisses the issue, saying the boy looked ordinary enough and that it is fine. A replay of the match makes the truth obvious. Seo-jun won by knockout, and observers conclude his footwork is improving as his body catches up. The conversation moves on, and his father asks how streaming has been going. He explains that Seo-jun's mother no longer objects now that they know streaming is safe, but he still has concerns. Seo-jun assumes the problem is that streaming should not be especially difficult. His father points out that building an audience is hard, recalling how even getting one viewer used to be a struggle. Then he reveals he has been thinking seriously about Seo-jun's situation. His suggestion is to try an older game called Planet Craft to attract attention. Seo-jun is skeptical that such an old title is still relevant, which makes his father question his gamer credentials. His father insists that unusual choices like that are exactly what bring viewers, then asks how many Seo-jun has now. Seo-jun answers that he had around 440 last time he checked and expects it to rise, since he already has 3,000 followers. The number shocks his father so badly that Seo-jun physically recoils from the sudden outburst. His father can barely process what he just heard. When it finally sinks in, he blurts out his disbelief at the jump to 3,000. The reason is soon explained. After Seo-jun's collaboration stream, the online community spent the whole day arguing about him. Posts about the collab spread rapidly, with every thread drawing heavy attention and strong reactions. As a result, many more people now knew Seo-jun's name, whether they liked him or not. Lying in bed later, Seo-jun gets a message telling him to look at one of those posts. The thread he opens attacks his game knowledge and mocks his criticism as empty posturing. Seo-jun reads it without much visible emotion, more puzzled than offended. A friend laughs that this is what fame looks like, since once people know you, they start nitpicking everything. Rather than argue pointlessly, Seo-jun decides the first step is to report the post. Then he settles on a more direct response and announces that he will do a clarification stream. To make that happen, he climbs into his streaming pod and prepares to address the controversy himself. 3 days after the game began, the developer waits to see how many people will show up after he turned himself in. The stream's audience count surges far beyond expectations, confirming that public interest has exploded. That impossible response jolts the developer into alarm. He realizes weak point detection has already been unlocked, far earlier than the game's structure should allow. His colleague reminds him that this was supposed to take at least a month because the game is huge and overloaded with content. The developer sinks into regret, bitterly recalling that he warned this might happen. He blames his colleague for ignoring that warning, and the exchange immediately turns prickly. The younger man stays calm and says this outcome was not really something anyone could have predicted. The developer demands to know what exactly the player figured out. Instead of answering directly, the younger man opens a video to show him the proof. The developer braces himself and asks what he is about to see. He is told it is footage of Seo-jun breaking the games, not mechanics. The video shows Seo-jun cutting through a supposedly difficult pattern with shocking speed and precision. He dismantles the mechanics so cleanly that it looks effortless, as if he understood the answer at a glance. Watching it, the developer can barely process how such a thing is even possible. His colleague rules out weak point detection as the cause, since that trick was checked long ago. He begins explaining that, as someone who has followed Seo-jun's streams, he understands how the player thinks. His conclusion is that Seo-jun recognized the hidden pattern instantly, something the entire team had needed months to refine. He insists with total confidence that this was not cheating but pure skill, and he is ready to defend Seo-jun personally. The developer cuts off the praise and drags the conversation back to the crisis at hand. The younger man pretends not to see the urgency, which only makes the developer more irritated. He finally spells it out. If the fragment system is exposed too early, their whole rollout plan collapses. The developer focuses on the real danger, the hidden item called the Shard of Order. He reveals that it was only an Easter egg meant to tease their next title, with a short chain quest unlocking only after all fragments were collected. That quest was supposed to lead into the next game, Fragments of Chaos. The teaser itself was built around that reveal, tying the current game to the future project. Their plan had been to release the teaser trailer at the exact moment players completed that chain. The developer had carefully calculated the schedule so the promotion would unfold naturally and maximize impact. But Seo Jun's unexpected breakthrough shattered those calculations in an instant. The developer collapses into despair, blaming a single player for wrecking months of planning. Trying to recover, he asks how long it originally took to make the teaser. He starts estimating whether brutal overtime could somehow let them rebuild it in time. His colleague guesses they might finish a replacement in about a week. The developer then asks the only question that matters. What are the odds Seo Jun gathers every shard of order before then? The younger man answers without hesitation that it will definitely happen. He doubles down and guarantees it completely, leaving no room for hope. That certainty crushes the developer even further. He can only glare at the man who has just confirmed the disaster. At last he snaps and throws him out. Once alone, the developer slumps back in his chair and tries to steady himself. Even after venting, he is still rattled by what he saw. He replays the footage, searching for some explanation he might have missed. Staring at the screen, he keeps asking himself how Seo Jun pulled it off. No answer comes, only a tense silence and growing unease. He finally admits to himself that the move in the video was real. The replay shows Seo Jun carving through enemies in a blur while the stream's popularity keeps climbing. The player's attack flow remains flawless, each motion chaining into the next without waste. Then Seo Jun unleashes a darker, more overwhelming power that makes the footage feel even more abnormal. The stream now openly centers on Seo Jun, with viewers dissecting his techniques as his legend grows. The clip ends on another brutal strike, underscoring that Seo Jun is not just progressing quickly but tearing through the game in a way the creators never planned for. A young man lies awake, still charged by something that has left him intensely alert. He savors the feeling, impressed by how satisfying the outcome has been. At his computer, he reflects that the route used to pressure his enemies was his own idea, and he is pleased it worked so well despite being exposed. Only when he notices the clock does he realize he has stayed up until deep into the night. Stretching back in his chair, he admits he has not felt this fulfilled in a long time. He compares it to watching a game he invested himself in finally start moving the way he intended. Remembering how he once fine-tuned code for an assassination squad, he recognizes the same thrill in seeing his design produce exactly the reactions he wanted. That realization leaves him quietly intrigued rather than disturbed. His attention shifts to a streamer named Seo Jun, and he decides to check the channel more closely. The next day, Seo Jun starts a live broadcast and greets his audience casually. As viewers flood in far faster than before, he notices the sudden surge and braces himself to handle it. Among the new arrivals is a dramatic user presenting himself like a masked assassin from Joseon. Others follow with equally absurd personas, including a battered writer introducing himself grandly. The stream fills out with even stranger role players, turning the chat into a parade of bizarre identities. Seo Jun checks whether all of these regulars are really present. He confirms that the moderators and early followers who have been with him from the start are all here. Their past messages show they joined immediately when he first asked for help, proving they have been unusually loyal from the beginning. He recalls how eagerly they accepted moderator roles just days earlier, making their devotion seem even more suspicious. So he decides to formally lay out the basic rules for his channel. He tells them to keep chat relevant, report anything disruptive, and use common sense instead of causing trouble. The audience accepts the rules easily, and he notes that this part at least is straightforward. He then explains how he uncovered the earlier exploit. He simply traced the odd behavior back through the game's systems. His flat delivery makes it clear he knows the explanation is incomplete, and he apologizes for not explaining that part better. Even so, he insists he only followed the worm-like traces on the gear until he found the obvious cut point. He adds that once he realized it might count as capsule hacking, he reported it instead of hiding it. The viewers are stunned when he reveals he even sent a report saying he may have used a hack without knowing it and asked the developers to verify it. Chat erupts in disbelief and amusement at how absurdly honest that was. Seo Jun, a little smug about his own sincerity, treats that as enough to settle the matter. Instead of doubting him, the audience starts praising him as weirdly competent and unexpectedly brilliant. With the explanation behind him, he moves on and prepares to begin the day's game. Before he can start properly, a mission notification appears. The mission comes directly from the developers of Dawn of the Assassination Squad and offers a huge first clear reward under a strict time limit. The target is introduced as a powerful mage-like figure tied to the mission's objective. Seo Jun immediately questions the premise, wondering whether magic can really be cut the same way he cuts everything else. After thinking it over, he concedes that it might be possible. What truly catches his attention is the enormous payout, which feels excessive for a first mission. That reward makes him pause and reconsider the setup more seriously. He starts to suspect the developer may be personally involved, and the game begins loading while he turns the idea over. Meanwhile, parts of the chat mock him for being gullible enough to take the mission at face value. The game world opens in a burst of light. He arrives in a city ruled by wizards, dominated by a towering magical structure. The mission briefing paints the city's mage leadership as outwardly respectable but secretly corrupt and dangerous. Behind their polished image, they have been conducting human experiments without remorse. Before the situation can settle, a sudden strike crashes nearby. A white-haired figure looks up as something fast and hostile cuts through the air. Seojun, already in assassin gear, intercepts the threat and closes in, sensing clear killing intent from behind. The supposed target turns out to be more startled than threatening, and Seojun dryly admits he had assumed this was the assassin. Realizing the man is just a terrified bystander, he mentally revises the situation and dismisses the idea of any honorable duel. As he moves on, he decides the mission is becoming too safe and predictable to stay interesting. He rejects the obvious route entirely, making it clear he has no intention of simply climbing to the top the way the game expects. He hesitates at the thought of entering the mage tower, wondering if this is more trouble than he needs. Even so, he commits and strides toward the tower. He pushes through the grand entrance, deciding to test his luck instead of backing down. Inside, he quickly takes in the tower's scale and the people moving through it. Not knowing the way, he chooses to trail a pair of robed figures, suspecting they are mages. As he follows them upstairs, he notices there are fewer true mages than expected and realizes most people here are ordinary staff or visitors. At a guarded doorway, he studies the situation and guesses the quiet route likely leads to the 4th floor. Seeing the guards relaxed and the path lightly watched, he judges that slipping through should be easy if he avoids drawing attention. A guard stops him and makes clear that the area beyond is restricted. The guard reaches for his weapon, expecting a little intimidation to send the intruder away. Instead, the protagonist strikes first and cuts the guard down before the warning can finish. The blow lands decisively, leaving the guard choking and collapsing from the sudden attack. He bursts through the doorway and forces his way deeper into the restricted area. But the moment he advances, an unseen effect seizes his body. He realizes something in the room has locked him in place before he can react. The paralysis spreads through him, and he understands he cannot move at all. A mocking laugh confirms that someone had been waiting for exactly this mistake. A mage reveals himself and announces that the intruder is already too late, gathering blue fire in both hands. With the protagonist immobilized, the mage unleashes his spell at point-blank range. The blue flames surge straight toward him, threatening to end the fight instantly. At the last possible moment, he braces himself against the incoming blast. Then the restraint suddenly loosens from his body. Realizing he can move again, he seizes the narrow opening to survive. He twists aside with extraordinary reflexes, letting the spell tear past instead of hitting cleanly. The attack misses its kill, and he creates distance before the mage can capitalize. Relieved, he confirms the paralysis has ended and that he is free to fight back. The mage admits the escape was lucky, but stays confident and prepares another spell. He answers by launching his own blue energy attack to break the mage's momentum. The blast races across the room and forces the mage onto the defensive. The mage counters immediately, sending another wave of power back at him. Now standing his ground, the protagonist steadies himself for a direct exchange. He activates a skill that identifies an enemy's weakness. His enhanced vision locks onto the mage and searches for the vulnerable point in the attack pattern. The battlefield shifts in his perception, revealing the incoming magic from every angle and exposing the opening he needs. He raises his sword and commits to a precise counter instead of retreating. Condensing power into a focused point, he prepares a single decisive strike. He cuts through the mage's spell with a sweeping slash, turning defense into offense in one motion. The technique overwhelms the magical barrage so completely that even the spectators are stunned by how cleanly he breaks it. He remains calm through the exchange, treating the flashy attack as nothing special once its weakness is exposed. The mage finally panics as he realizes the fight has slipped out of his control. A red arc of force tears through the room toward him before he can recover. The slash sends the mage flying and ends the duel in a single crushing hit. With the enemy down, the protagonist dismisses the fight as easy. His attention shifts back to the earlier paralysis, and he starts questioning what stopped his body before. The hovering chat urges silence, clearly amused that he still has not figured out the answer. He decides to end the stream to stop the distractions, but the viewers frantically beg him to wait. Before he can cut them off, the chat explains that each floor of the tower applies a debuff, and the 4th floor causes temporary paralysis. As that explanation lands, he notices another presence nearby and someone challenges him from behind. A new swordsman rushes in, attacking before the protagonist can fully turn. The ambush is stopped at the last instant when the incoming blade is caught, freezing the new clash before it can land. A status effect flips his left and right senses, but he keeps moving and swings anyway. An enemy tries to capitalize on his confusion with a direct overhead strike. He catches the attack at the last instant, and turns the exchange back on his opponent. His counter cuts through with enough force to send foes flying and end the ambush immediately. Even while noting how absurdly well he adapts, he advances toward the next floor without slowing down. At the 6th floor, he has to ask what the gimmick is because he cannot immediately recall it. He pauses, trying to orient himself before stepping into the trap. The floor answers first as the structure around him begins to collapse. A torrent of debris crashes through the hall, threatening to bury him before he can react. He stays calm instead of panicking, reading the danger in silence. A sudden realization hits him as he remembers what this floor is meant to do. The slowing debuff drags at him so badly that even simple movement becomes a struggle. He recalls that the 7th floor is a darkness curse that strips away vision. His goal sharpens. If he can get through this, he will reach the master of the Aetherius Spire. He steps onto the next floor and is immediately transferred into the trial area. The darkness is so complete that even observers doubt he can survive when he cannot see anything. Instead of hesitating, he walks forward through the black as if he already has a plan. He reasons that the room's structure should match the earlier floors and decides to navigate by memory. Closing his eyes to focus, he reconstructs the layout in his head. Once his route is set, he ignites power in his hand to begin fighting blind. He launches a sweeping attack along the path where he expects the enemy to be. The strike tears through the darkness at high speed, guided by calculation rather than sight. He recognizes the flashy effect for what it is and stays unimpressed, treating it as noise rather than a threat. Planting his foot, he commits to the next movement with total confidence. His attack shatters a massive obstruction, proving his memory-based approach is working. He keeps pressing forward, forcing the hidden opponent onto the defensive. A storm of red slashes erupts from him, carving through the room in intersecting lines. The assassin watching this realizes his performance is beyond normal human limits. He senses the enemy's position and turns toward it with quiet certainty. Blue projectiles rain down in response, trying to pin him from above. He bursts upward through the barrage, using speed and instinct to close the distance. He cuts through the incoming attacks mid-rush and keeps advancing straight at the caster. The hooded woman loses composure as she realizes he is breaking through everything she throws at him. He catches the opening in her panic and locks onto her exact location. With a predatory calm, he makes it clear that he has finally found her. That certainty rattles her, and fear replaces her earlier control. She desperately unleashes another wave of blue magic from her platform to stop him. He meets the attack head-on, reading its path without needing sight. A blue barrier forms around her as she tries to survive his approach. He crashes through the defense with a red-edge strike, overwhelming her protection. The assassin is left standing exposed on her magic circle, no longer hidden by darkness or distance. Winded and shaken, she realizes the assassination attempt has failed. In desperation, she channels fire into one last attack from close range. He welcomes the escalation, enjoying the fight now that she is finally using real force. Elsewhere, the stream continues almost absurdly normally, with footsteps, donations, and chatter carrying on in parallel. Back in the tower, he remains composed on the cleared floor, already past the danger. Viewers are stunned by the flood of donations and by how casually he accepts them while advancing. He adds one more dry remark, still treating the whole ordeal with effortless calm. With the 7th floor cleared, he dismisses the feat as something anyone would do and marks the mission complete. He arrives at the 8th floor before the doors to the Tower Master's study, one step away from the true objective. He notices a post about the patient on a white horse challenge and pauses when it claims there is a guide for the Tower Master. The guide promises advice before entering, specifically for clearing the Tower Master encounter. He opens the community post and sees that, with many people chasing rulers because of a famous streamer, someone is sharing what they learned. The post explains that the Tower Master fight has 2 phases, and the real obstacle begins in the second. Phase 2 is presented as the point where the boss becomes overwhelming, attacking relentlessly instead of relying on a manageable pattern. The writer says the boss creates a barrier that only bomb-level damage can crack, making explosives seem like the obvious answer. But that strategy collapses under inventory and weight limits, so brute-forcing the barrier with bombs alone is impossible. Worse, the Tower Master also floods the field with lightning, turning the second phase into a constant storm. Even bringing extra people does not help, because allies just become lightning rods and make survival harder. The guide concludes that the boss keeps the lightning going non-stop and instantly restores the barrier whenever it is broken, making the fight feel unwinnable. In the end, even the guide's author admits failure, and leaves only an unfinished record of frustration. Checking his own inventory, he sees he lacks the tools others thought were necessary, which only highlights how little room he has for conventional solutions. Even so, he refuses to accept that the fight has no answer and starts searching for another way. He realizes this attempt could easily kill him, but the danger only sharpens his resolve. When the mission reward appears, the enormous payout makes clear why so many people are obsessed with this challenge. He recognizes the reward as bait designed to trap reckless challengers, but he also knows that is exactly why people keep trying. A familiar voice warns him not to be fooled again, and the calm tone only makes the temptation feel more personal. He answers with quiet confidence, already having made up his mind. He decides to face the Tower Master himself. The fight reaches phase 2 almost immediately, and he is forced into a full-speed retreat as the lightning begins. He realizes the attacks are faster than a Grandmaster's quickdraw, so survival will depend on reading the cast before it lands. The Tower Master challenges him directly, confident that his lightning cannot be avoided. Instead of panicking, he notices a slight delay before each spell activates and starts studying the boss's eyes for targeting cues. He adds the boss's hand movements to his analysis, treating every cast like a pattern to decode. By mapping the danger zones, he begins slipping through the tiny safe paths between the strikes. His evasions become so precise that even onlookers can tell he is no longer surviving by luck. Once he settles into the rhythm, his silence shows he has entered complete concentration. He then realizes the boss is subtly steering him, preventing him from circling behind and controlling where he can move. The pattern becomes clear: the shield blocks frontal attacks, and any sidestep route pushes him back toward the lightning lanes. That restriction makes him look past the obvious target and search the room for what is really anchoring the defense. He identifies a separate device linked to the barrier and decides to test whether direct contact will disrupt it. He commits instantly, drawing his blade and lunging for the mechanism despite the risk. The moment he moves, his killing intent sharpens and he abandons caution for a decisive strike. He cuts through the space between attacks and drives his assault toward the barrier's source instead of the boss. His blade collides with the shield system, confirming he has found the right point of interference. He follows with a massive red slash, forcing the Tower Master to react instead of calmly controlling the field. For the first time, the Tower Master is visibly rattled and demands to know where he thinks he is going. Under the barrage, he concludes that ordinary swordsmanship cannot break the shield and that countering lightning head-on should be impossible. That contradiction makes him question why the mission exists at all unless the fight contains a hidden weakness. Trusting that hunch, he decides the answer must lie inside the lightning itself rather than outside it. Studying the storm, he sees the bolts branch like shattered glass and recognizes a central intersection where the pattern converges. He understands the structure of the spell so completely that the deadly lightning suddenly looks elegant instead of chaotic. At the convergence point, the energy condenses into a single brilliant core. He raises his sword into that core and seizes the lightning rather than avoiding it. His expression hardens as he takes control of a force no normal fighter should be able to touch. Then he swings, sending the captured lightning back across the field in a sweeping counterattack. The redirected power detonates violently as it crashes into the barrier. The Tower Master is forced to defend against his own element as the shield starts to fail under the impact. Even spectators realize he has done something beyond standard tactics, using a method only he could have discovered in the moment. With the opening created, he surges forward to press the advantage before the Tower Master can recover. A violent red strike tears through the battlefield as the clash reaches its decisive moment. A crimson magic circle flares, signaling the enemy's trap or attack activating at full force. The white-haired Tower Master reveals he expected brute force and turned that mistake into an opening to absorb more mana and make his own escape easier. Watching through the stream, the audience mocks the apparent panic and assumes the fight is already over. Instead, the black-cloaked fighter sharpens his focus and sees through the situation. He launches a precise counterattack straight toward the true target rather than the obvious threat. Realizing where the real core is, he drives his power upward with perfect timing. The hidden structure of the spell is exposed, and he cuts through the actual weak point behind the larger decoy formation. The Tower Master recognizes too late that his opponent has seen through the trick and calls the move painfully obvious. The assassin commits without hesitation, closing in for the kill. His red blade descends before the Tower Master can complete his retreat. The Tower Master tries to laugh it off and rely on teleportation, only to realize the strike has already ruined that escape. The system confirms the Tower Master Duke is dead, awarding the next fragment of order as the viewers erupt over the sudden reversal. With the target down, the assassin turns his attention to claiming the mission reward and exploiting the Tower Master's weakness. Elsewhere, observers confirm that he truly defeated the Tower Master and expect him to gather the remaining fragments next. One of them immediately moves to contact team leader Kim about the streamer tied to this upheaval. The story shifts to a quiet cathedral-like hall where another faction reviews the aftermath. A superior asks about Altion and notes that someone seems to have already done their work for them. Using a chessboard metaphor, the reply explains that only the root remains while 3 of the 4 branches have already been removed. They suspect an assassination squad, though the methods do not match that group's usual style. Rather than treating the unknown killer as only a threat, one of them wonders if that force can be recruited. The answer is uncertain, offering no confidence either way. In the end, they conclude no one else can handle it for them. The purple-haired officer decides she will personally go to see this through. Meanwhile, the stream chat pieces together the truth. Christina's side wanted the Tower Master dead, the streets are being cleaned up, and the assassin may be acting under hidden orders. Back outside, the assassin casually notes that one phase is over and the story is finally advancing. He finds the area strangely deserted and starts questioning why no one is around after such chaos. The chat points out that sensible people would avoid the area entirely, and he accepts that explanation. Looking up at the damaged tower, he dryly counts the operation as another successful assassination. He even plays to the audience by celebrating the kill, while the chat argues over whether he should admit it so openly. When a donor named Ark sends money, he thanks them, and the viewers react as if a celebrity has appeared. The chat explains that Ark is a famous former card game pro and respected analyst. The assassin realizes his audience is broader and stranger than he expected. As he walks on, he reflects that far more kinds of people are watching him than he first thought. Just as he prepares to move on to his next objective, a hidden figure appears behind him. The stranger suddenly grabs his arm and stops him in place. Caught off guard, he is yanked sideways before he can react. A blonde woman intercepts him at close range and addresses him by the name Nameless. She warmly thanks him, explaining that with 3 rulers already gone, his actions have greatly helped her side. As proof of goodwill, she hands him a pouch as payment. He protests weakly but accepts the gold immediately, exposing his practical greed. Their exchange is interrupted by another arrival who formally greets Nameless. The newcomer introduces himself as Arthur Haig, the branch manager of Altion. Arthur shakes his hand and begins by expressing gratitude for what he has done. He credits Nameless with cleaning up Altion's streets by removing dangerous figures and restoring order. But while maintaining the handshake, Arthur signals that his real purpose is not praise. His expression hardens as he asks Nameless to stop assassinating the rulers. The request appears like a game dialogue choice, with Arthur demanding a valid reason if Nameless wants an answer. The assassin is baffled that his viewers already know which option he is about to choose. Even while claiming he intends to pick the second response, he is baited into selecting the first instead, to the chat's delight and his own annoyance. The gray-haired man refuses to be treated as a hero, arguing that if he had truly mattered, no one would have abandoned him so easily. The other man concedes that point, acknowledging the harsh truth behind his bitterness. He still insists the situation is too unstable to leave unattended, warning that with the last ruler gone, the order could spiral out of control. The gray-haired man agrees only to delay his departure until Altion is brought back under control. With that temporary promise settled, the two sides part, and the blonde woman pointedly reminds him they will meet again. Back on his stream, viewers immediately suspect the branch manager is shady, and he privately agrees that the man's role in the order does not add up. Just as he tries to end the broadcast, his audience protests so loudly that he changes course. He decides to stay on a little longer because he has received a response he wants everyone to see. The message from customer support confirms that his previous account penalties were not caused by hacking, clearing him of that accusation. As the chat celebrates his vindication, he reveals he has one more announcement. He posts a public notice that he is urgently hiring an editor for his channel. He explains that applicants should send him a sample edit of his gameplay footage. To make it easier, he adds that they can upload the edited clip privately, and just send him the link. Working alone at his desk, he earnestly asks for serious interest rather than casual replies. Seeing viewers react in surprise to his sudden recruitment post, he signs off for real this time. After ending the stream, he is left mulling over the idea of finally having an editor. Later, he settles in with beer and fried chicken, pleased to enjoy the comfort of a post-stream meal. His friend joins in the feast, joking around as they eat and drink together. While they relax, the friend reveals he already knows about the editor search because he was watching the stream. He follows that up with a proposal to join his MCN, presenting it as a business opportunity. When the streamer asks what that means, the friend explains that the company would handle the channel's management and operations for him. The offer escalates quickly when the friend says their CEO is free the next day and suggests meeting in person. The streamer turns it down for tomorrow, forcing his friend to ask what could be more important. He reveals that a team leader from Moviesoft has already contacted him. When he adds that they are meeting tomorrow, his friend is stunned by how fast things have moved. The shock turns into disgusted disbelief, as if this kind of sudden corporate attention is absurdly trendy. In the commotion, the friend jerks his drink and spills beer all over the chicken. The proof on the phone makes clear why he is so rattled. Moviesoft has formally invited the streamer to discuss a possible contract.